All right, let's watch this.
Yes.
Nationalism is better.
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture.
Which, do you get to choose what the culture is?
We already have a dominant culture.
I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. Like, you and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. Hi, I'm Sam Seder, host of the Majority Report, and today I am surrounded by 20 conservatives.
Why is their audio so dog shit? Why is the audio so bad?
My first claim is Trump's attack on DEI hides his real goal, which is to give corporations more power.
Of course that's true. Of course that's true. They're all scared. I legitimately say this. Self-harm is awful. Never, ever support it. But if I found myself running to a chair to do a debate, I would reflect on my life choices. Let's just.
No worries.
All right. I think I have a slight issue with the back end of the premise. I guess Trump's attacks on DEI being a real goal to, give corporations more power. I'd rather center the conversation around the democratic, especially as conservatives, the issues that people have with DEI and why I believe Trump would, want to support the issues that, people are voting for him for.
I mean, I'm talking about his whole attack on DEI. It's actually DEIA, sure. Right? You know that.
Right.
In government agencies. The A being for accessibility.
Right. Yeah, and I think the attack on DEI isn't an attack on people's protections. It's on the other end of the spectrum, right? Wanting to end DEI doesn't want to end protections for someone being disabled, someone being inaccessible to get into a job. It rather wants to de-incentivize corporations to push them to hire these people on unfair bases, right?
Okay, but DEIA is not about quotas or anything like that. It is about protections for people within these organizations, or to make sure that you have different communities that have the opportunity to apply to these things.
Right.
So it can mean, within government agencies, it means things like, let's pay interns so that not only wealthy people can have their kids do internships in these agencies.
Right.
Or let's put out notices around different parts of town,
sure.
Metaphorically speaking, so that people know this job exists.
Right. This is where it begins, but this isn't the ultimate goal that conservatives have an issue with. Conservatives don't have.
Conservatives want you to judge society based on race. They want you to notice that white men are disproportionately powerful, and then they want to maintain that. They want to ignore how it got that way, and then they want to maintain that. And if white people don't maintain their supremacist position, well, then now you're doing DEI, right? You want to ignore history. This is the essence of conservatism. Ignore history up until today, and then declare whatever's going on today is the natural outcome of the market and meritocracy, and then any effort to change how things are today is undermining fairness. That is the conservative argument in a nutshell. And the reason why they make that argument is they deploy the fallacious sense of self-interest in the audience of white men. They go to white men and they say, hey, if you let the left get their way, you're not going to be able to get in the same position your dad is. That's it. That's the essence of it in a nutshell. It is ultimately cynical, self-interested, ahistorical, and immoral.
have an issue with trying to spread job applications to poorer communities.
Well, then why rescind DEIA requirements in government agencies?
Because the problem with DEIA is there may not be like perceived actual number quotas, but that's what it devolves into, and especially with corporations,
do you have evidence of that?
I mean, sure, we can look at corporations that are government agencies that are hiring people on not true proper bases. We can even look at.
I mean,
we can even look at.
Would you have
DNC's,
any evidence that that's happening?
Yeah, even the DNC's nomination of Kamala as president this year, there was no reason to nominate Kamala as she wasn't democratically selected. She wasn't.
Oof, he's right. Oof, he's right.
She
was.
But that being said, it has nothing to do with what the fuck are you talking about. She didn't get picked because of DEI. She got picked because the Democratic Party's ideologically committed to centrism, and they wanted to avoid a democratic process because they're corrupt too.
Didn't go through a single primary. None of these things.
So you're saying that Kamala was the vice president of the United States after the president drops out 2 months before the convention. You think that's a DEI
She wasn't
hire?
Every presidential nominee is Democrat.
She kind of was a DEI hire. Let's be honest. I mean, like, honestly, let's be honest for a second here. The reason why she was picked as VP in the first place was because she was a black woman. Because Joe Biden said two racist things back to back, and he was looking really stupid. He said, like, if you didn't vote for me, you ain't black. And then he said that poor kids are just as smart as white kids, implying that white kids aren't ever poor. Therefore, who's the poor one? You know, black kids. So he had two straightforwardly racist comments back to back, and it looked really bad. So he's like, oh, shit. I better pick my VP. It's going to be Kamala Harris, the black woman. See? I'm not racist. It's not like she was shambolic, and she was never good on the stump. But she represented, it was like, he's an old white man, and he's going to throw a bone to libs, and he's going to, you know, he's going to cover up his racist comments. That's exactly what it was. So, I mean, you know. I think that's what people think of when they think of DEI, which is someone not given a job because of their qualifications, but given a job because of their, you know, immutable characteristics to make a cheap play for identity politics. I think people are offended by that. Now, whether or not, you know, I think that we should be trying to find inclusive leadership. And there are leaders from all sorts of diverse backgrounds. Kamala Harris sucks.
Democratically selected to be the nominee for that.
Was Biden a DEI hire for Obama? Yes. Of course he was. Of course he was. Biden was picked because of his race. I don't want Kamala Harris's and I don't want Biden's on the ticket anymore. I want people that are legitimate political leaders who are ready to be president. That's what I want. I don't want the fucking, you're telling me I have to hate Joe Biden if I hate Kamala Harris? Deal.
You realize there were not even primaries prior to 1972 in the Democratic Party?
This isn't before 1972.
Well, I understand, but what did you think you were going to run primaries in those 2 months?
Well, sure.
I mean, Joe Biden should have dropped out even 3 years ago, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, sure, but even before, when Kamala was running in primaries, she wasn't the next man up. None of this. She wasn't the next person.
Well, she was the vice president,
right? Of course, but she wasn't in primaries.
Detail. But listen, aside from, I would have might have wanted a different candidate as well. But that has nothing to do with Trump rescinding orders that basically say you need to search for a wide range of candidates, not necessarily give any different benefits, but you need to make sure different communities have access to the awareness of this job. You need in your office accessibility for people who have physical handicaps.
Sure.
If you have folks who identify as as trans.
Are we F? I don't see any F. I have 0 drop frames. I'm at. That would be a Twitch thing. That ain't me.
You need to make it at least hospitable and not, this is all non-discriminatory stuff. That's what this is all about.
But you're cherry picking the portions of DEI that even conservatives don't have issue.
Okay, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is what always happens when you debate a conservative. This is what always happens. Every single time. And it didn't take long. You know, Sam Seder's winning when this happens, which is conservatives just start saying, well, I don't agree with that. Right? Like, they'll just say, well, you're right. I don't agree with that, because they don't know anything. So as soon as you start like bringing up actual facts, they'll be like, no, I don't agree with that. And Trump doesn't agree with that. Right? And you'll be like, yes, he does. They'll be like, no, he doesn't. And the debate is over, because every single conservative, and most Americans in general, this happens with liberals as well, have just a mind palace. And they've just invented shit. And they live inside this mind palace. And the moment you start to compare their mind palace to reality, they shut down. They start going like, oh, no, I agree with that, so it must not be part of DEI. And it's like, actually, it is, you dumbass. You know, passing laws so that handicapped people have access to the movie theater is DEI, and corporations fought tooth and nail against it. And it took generations of disabled activists saying, we're here. We're not just going to be put in institutions. We're not just going to be locked up in our homes. We have a right to be a member of society and go out in public and participate in commercial life and public life and get an education. That was activism, you dumbass. God damn, you unlettered swine.
Conservatives don't have issues with making workplaces.
The whole DEI apparatus within our government was a function of doing exactly what I said, had nothing to do with quotas.
It is unfortunate that those things get taken out, and there might not have been specific numerical quotas.
What else is he trying to take out?
It's trying to take out people getting jobs that don't deserve those jobs. People getting pushed into positions they have no qualification.
There is no evidence.
There is evidence that people are being given jobs they don't deserve or they're not qualified for. It's called the veteran preference. In our federal laws, most of our federal employees are veterans, and they get a massive boost in their application. So there is one group of people who there are quotas for. There's one group of people that get massively boosted in federal employment and government employment. It's veterans. So let's be honest, okay? Let's be honest about who the DEI and who the affirmative action is for. It's not for black people. It's not for people of color. It's not for queer people. It's for veterans.
Of what you just said happening in these government agencies.
That's not true at all. I mean, we're not allowed to sit here and have notes and numbers to pull up for you. You can't
give me one example.
You can't ask me to pull up numbers when I'm not able to sit here and look on a computer for you. But these are the problems that conservatives.
Sorry, you've been voted out. Please return to your seat.
Thanks, Sam.
Voted out! Voted out! God. Oh. I had the same experience as a liberal telling me Biden would have been better for Gaza because of Trump's hotel video, and I told him Biden was also planning on ethnically cleansing Gaza, and he wouldn't believe it. I even showed him articles proving it. Yeah, because he lives in a mind palace, and you've attacked the mind palace's foundation. So when the mind palace's foundation has been attacked, either he has to reevaluate his entire belief system, or he just doesn't like you. Guess what people choose? Guess what people choose? When you attack someone's mind palace and you shatter it, and they have two fucking choices, dislike you or reevaluate what they believe, they choose they will hate you every time. And then they won't invent reasons to dislike you. I get this a lot, actually. Even in, like, the number one thing that frustrates me is when I go into leftist spaces and people be like, oh, Mike is mean, and Mike is like, he's an asshole, or Mike does this, or they invent some bullshit. It's not even based on any reality, right? And it's just like, what did I embarrass you about, my friend? What was the thing that I made you crash out over? People fucking hate you in Hoscore. I really don't know why, but it's annoying. Oh, it's because basically I humiliated Vosh many years ago. And it really comes from that. Basically the fact that I didn't like Vosh. So a lot of the people have forgotten that's why. And like then they kind of like invented new shit. I mean, they just kind of, sometimes people say it's because I do drama, even though I do less drama than almost every other person. You know what I mean? Like, it's very odd. Hoscore doesn't like Vosh, but that's where it originally comes from. Basically, I was like, no, Vosh fucking sucks, and these people suck. You know, Bo of the Fifth Column sucks. Like, people that, like, they've dropped all the people that I said sucked, and it basically fundamentally agree with what I said now. But the anger they had toward me is still in there, and so they just invent a new reason. And that in the faction of libs who are bad about your vote, good. Be mad. You don't like Vouch, LOL. Bro, who do you think knows this shit better than you? I've been in Hoscord since like 2018. Do you think that I know Hoscord better than you, or you know it better than me? What do you fucking think? It's also the Edgermentum thing. Like, I really hated Edgermentum. And so people would be like, no, Edgermentum's great, and Mike's wrong. Mike's an asshole, right? And then he was completely, utterly fucking humiliated and proven wrong, and I was proven completely right. Did those people change their mind? No, they're like, Mike may have been right, but he's drama. That's what it comes down to. And it's like, wait a minute. But you have no problem with other people make their entire stream around drama. It's weird. People remember how you made them feel long after they forgot what you said. Yes, that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point. Is I offended people over Vosh or Edgermentum or whatever the fuck else, or Bo the Fifth Column, and they held on to that offense, even though they forgot why. Whatever happened with Edgermentum? He's just bad at political analysis, and he's a liberal, and I don't like him because of that. It's really not that complicated. I think Hoscord hated you for hyping Fetterman too much. No, absolutely not.
See ya.
Okay, so I think the roots issue with DEI isn't what the previous gentleman was trying to point. Conservatives aren't necessarily have issues with those things like accessibility to people who might need help. The issue is, and I kind of referred to this before, when you have agencies and systems, what tends to happen when you have government overreach, big government, is that agencies and systems get abused. And I think unequivocally, DEI was heavily abused in practice. It was great in theory. It's idealistic, which is sure is fine.
Okay, this is just... Okay, this is like one of those situations that you'll get with conservatives a lot of the time as well, which is they'll do this thing where it's like, oh, it's great in theory, but not in practice. And you'll be like, okay, can you demonstrate how it was bad in practice? Please, can you explain it? And it'll take so long for them to get to the point.
A lot of people can get behind, but it was abused in a lot of ways. When you have actors, like we're in California right now, when you have actors, white male actors who are being told, we do not want white men, we're not gonna cast any white men, we only want this particular kind of gender, race, right? That is an abuse of a system. It's no longer fair, but more about just perpetuating one aspect of, visual compelling aspects. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is companies are going to say, well, we want to look the most diverse. Okay, and what that is it's moral grandstanding. It's saying because we have more black women, we're
all right, so wait a minute. Okay, so this the example he uses is white men are not being cast in Hollywood. That's the example he's using. White men are not being cast in Hollywood. Am I getting that? Am I getting that right? What the fuck are you talking about, man? Macaulay Culkin's brother is winning Oscars. What the fuck are you talking about, man? What the fuck are you talking about, man? Timothée Chalamet is like one of the top people. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? That's crazy. That's fucking crazy. That's crazy.
We sell better soda, like that.
I got you.
That is not.
Well, that's getting a little far afield from what Trump's DEI orders are. But I can tell you, as somebody who was a sitcom actor in the 90s, I would walk into a room and everybody I would see would look like me. And I was doing a second position, which doesn't even exist anymore, where you do 2 pilots a year. And I was looking around basically every part of television when I was a kid. I was centered in some fashion. It was either this is about my mother, or this is about my father, or someone like me was centered. So, you know, we can argue as to whether or not Hollywood is overcorrected in some fashion. But on a governmental level, the DEIA...
Which they have not done, by the way. Also, free market. They're trying to make money. They make shows to make money. If they think having more diverse people is going to make them more money, then they do that. Like, what are you talking about? They're there to make money, motherfucker. What, you want to make a rule where they have to put white guys in? What are you talking about? That's the definition of DEI. And by the way, Hollywood is 100% nepotism out the ass. What, you think you're going to get in there from merit?
Directives that agencies were following for the past 4 years. There's nothing, I don't know what you mean by abuse on it, but there is no evidence that it was an affirmative action program in those instances. It was about anti-discrimination. You cannot discriminate against these people, and you want to open up opportunities for a broad swath of people. Again, the internship is like one of the most material things that exist there, where the idea that you need to pay interns. And that's important because you want low-income people to have the same sort of like opportunities to see these things as wealthy people. You know, my kids can maybe afford to do an internship for the summer instead of going to get a job.
I think what's happening is we're talking about 2 different things.
But I'm talking about Trump's DEIA rescission is a way of basically driving people out of these agencies, making it
you're saying Trump specifically, and I understand why you're saying Trump, but I think
he's the president of the United States and the leader of the Republican Party and the conservative movement. You fucking idiot! That's why he's saying Trump. You dumbass! What the fuck are you talking about? Very white community here, isn't it? It's a lot less white than Twitch in general. But this is this is an online space. Of course, it's going to be whiter than the world as a whole, because to get into online spaces, you have to pass a certain, a few material bubbles. You know, you have to have enough money to have a computer or a smartphone. You have to have an internet connection. You know, you have to know about Twitch. You have to have the free time. Like, this is a video game website that, you know, of course the people here are going to overwhelmingly be wealthier than the average person. Like, duh, are you fucking stupid? Do you not know how material reality works?
I think the American people as a whole have kind of, and I won't say whole because obviously it's not 100%, but a majority of the American people have kind of rejected DEI because, again,
I don't think a majority of Americans know what DEIA is.
That may be the case, but again, my point is we're talking about abuse of a system. What you're talking about is not necessarily what was happening. What people were seeing were, hey, because you're white, you can't do this. And liberals like to do this thing where they create systems, and then they created the whole idea of woke, and then they backed away, and then conservatives say woke, and then they're like, we don't know what woke is. They created DEI. Biden literally said, Kamala Harris is being chosen because she is a black woman, and then all of a sudden, Democrats for the rest after that said that's not why she was chosen, even though Biden literally said that. And then we have this cognitive dissonance as if we're not living in reality.
Biden wanted to make sure that there was that there was an opportunity for a black woman to be his vice president.
Yes, but why did Democrats move away from that and say no? It wasn't because she was a black woman. My point is that
it's not because she's a black woman.
But that's what they said. I can agree that it's not because she's a black woman, but that's what they said. Why did they say that then?
No, because there are plenty of black women, right? Like, he could have picked anybody, but he picked specifically her. You're positing the idea that there wasn't a black woman who would have been qualified for that position.
No,
and I don't believe that.
No, that's not what conservatives aren't saying, that there aren't, because again, and even in the
yes, they are, you dumbass. This is why you're a conservative black man, because you don't understand what conservatives are saying. Conservatives are saying any black person is inferior. So on their face, if you see a black person in one of those positions, they don't deserve to be there. That's what conservatives say. You're not on the team, bro. You can be a pick-me all you want, but you're not on the team, man. They deleted, right now, Doge just deleted photographs of the Enola Gay out of the archives. Because why? They simply searched gay in the federal archives and just hit delete all. And whoops, the photos of the Enola Gay were also deleted. You're not on, they're not only are they not doing DEI, they're actively trying to remove people who are gay, who are people of color, who are women, and like, they're just actively trying to delete them. They're outright discriminating.
Republican Party right now, and in Trump's cabinet, there are people of color that Democrats pretend don't exist, like J.D. Vance's wife, and
J.D. Vance's wife is not in the cabinet.
No, but
War heroes and a gay plane are among images flagged for removal in Pentagon's DEI purge. Some photos seem to be flagged for removal because their file included the word gay, including service members with that surname and the World War II aircraft Enola Gay. References to a World War II Medal of Honor recipient, the Enola Gay aircraft that dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, and the first woman to pass Marine infantry training are among the tens of thousands of photos and online posts marked for deletion as the Defense Department works to purge diversity, equity, and inclusion content. One official who spoken on the condition of anonymity to provide details that have not been made public said the purge could delete as many as 100,000 images or posts in total when considering social media pages and other websites that are also being called for DEI content. Like, this is literally what they're doing, you dumbass. Oh, you have a black person in a photo for the Pentagon? Delete. Oh, you have the name gay? Delete.
But if J.D. Vance was a Democrat, his wife would be lauded all over everything because of her color of her skin.
Listen, I'm not here to defend the Democrats' choice on every policy, but there is one party in this country that is identitarian. There is one party that is represented and it is homogenous, and it is the Republican Party. 85% of Republicans are white. That's just the reality of it.
So does that
Some
mean
people
that,
don't necessarily have a problem with that.
But here's the thing. You said even if let's just say, okay, that's true. 80% of Republicans are white. Does that mean that they're less moral? That they can't run an effective government? What does race have to do? What does race have to do? Hold on. What does
Donald Trump didn't have to say my vice president's going to be a white male.
No.
Because they all knew it was going to be.
No, this is the premise of DEI. What does race have to do with running an effective of government. What does race have to do? If let's say DEI on the micro level.
I will tell you right now.
DEI on the micro level at McDonald's.
I'll tell you.
Am I going to get better nuggets?
Listen, I'll ask you a question.
If the cashier is black or white, what does that have to do with anything?
I'll tell you what it. First of all, DEIA means that if you come into this agency or corporation, you're not going to be discriminated against because you don't look like everybody else, or you don't have the same like physical abilities as everybody else, or you may require handles on the bathroom or whatever it is. That's what DEIA does. But does it make a government better if there's a broad representation of the people it's supposed to govern? Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Regardless of DEI, don't we already have things in our Constitution that protect people's rights, protects people?
No.
We don't?
No.
Do we or do we not?
No, we do not. Tell me what protects people from discrimination in housing and in work and hiring or getting loans? It's all statutes. It's all statutes. And in these government agencies, there was nothing except for that order. That's why Trump just rescinded it.
I'm gonna tap out because I think.
Oh my God, dude. And this is part of the struggle with politics, right? This is part of the struggle with politics, right? Because people don't know what they're talking about. All right? They just simply do not know what they're talking about. And this is my struggle, is most people don't know what they're talking about. And they try to have debates and they get really loud. And it's kind of an interesting thing where it's this vulgar democracy, which is the idea of if I have an opinion, it suddenly gains some legitimacy because I have the right to vote, right? So my opinion, my made up shit, suddenly has a little bit of cachet because I'm a voter and you don't want to piss me off too much. And it's like, actually, no, fuck you. If you're a stupid asshole, you should shut the fuck up. Went to a protest of just me and the organizer and a little old lady up the road, and we got a ton of hate fuck yous to go back to Mexico's. But for every one of those, we were met with love and support tenfold. A woman even brought us Chick-fil-A and $10 gift cards. It was very inspiring, and I'm glad I started to get out to the fight. Your coverage and message is so important. I'm glad you got out there. It's always important to get together and get ready. That being said, we need to up our game. Based on the arrest of a literal protest leader, we need to up our game. It's the South Bank of the Rubicon. This First Amendment does not exist in this country anymore, especially if you criticize Israel. This guy spent his last retort screaming about McDonald's nuggets, then hits the I'm gonna tap out button. You got fucking owned, dude. Holy shit. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge. That's right. And part of what makes democracy work, one of the things that prevents socialism and true democracy from forming is because you have to be an educated person who has civic virtue in order to effectively administer your own rights. That's why we need things like public compulsory school. You need public compulsory education because we need to educate people. You are not born with all the knowledge you need to survive in a modern society. You are not. And so that is the crisis, is that conservatives are trying to dismantle that. Why are conservatives trying to dismantle public education again? Because they want to make you into peasants. They want you to become superstitious peasants without the knowledge, without the wherewithal to fight up for your own rights.
I think someone else has a better, can defend that point specifically better than me.
All right, please return to your seat.
Al Franken sucks. Fuck Al Franken, honestly.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Okay, when it comes to DEI, essentially, if a person was not racist, he would hire someone regardless.
Okay, there you go, chat. I gotta say this. Like, this is what I was talking about. How are conservatives a caricature? Like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? This motherfucker should be using he, they pronouns. Like, what is this? And he's on Jubilee now? What's going on here? This is crazy.
That's right. So why would we need a policy to
LA
protect
conservatives, dude.
a person if we've moved past racism? So would you consider yourself racist?
Wait, are you suggesting we've moved past racism?
Would you consider yourself racist?
I consider myself, and sometimes I think we all practice like some form of, white supremacy. I think actually like we all do to some degree.
Well, I'm glad that you're saying that. So I guess going to the LGBT topic, it seems like it's very prevalent for you as an issue.
Well, it seems like a big issue. I mean, the Republican Party spent literally hundreds of millions of dollars demonizing trans people.
Well, the reason why they've done something like that, and I think you're misconstruing the narrative, they haven't demonized them. They simply
Misconstruing, you illiterate, innumerate fuck. I hate these people. I legitimately hate these people, and I've hated them for years. Okay, what are you misconstruing? What the fuck is this? Is it gonna pop out of your toaster? Like, what is misconstruing? What the fuck are you talking about? I've said this for a long time, and this has always been my take. You don't hate conservatives enough. Okay? You don't hate conservatives enough.
want protections back for their own children because children are being stripped away from
Who's their
parents.
own children? Wait, children are being stripped away from their parents?
Yes, due to AB 954, they've now included gender identity as a premise to remove and strip parental rights for children who maybe they are rejecting their gender ideology.
So, but you'd be okay with parents who agree with their children's doctors to provide gender-affirming care?
I do not agree with that. Do you?
I believe that parents and doctors can make those decisions with the kids.
If
of course.
child can't smoke, drink, or have sex before the age of 18, they should not be able to consent to a sex change. Now, in terms of a DEI initiative, the reason why there's military bans on trans women and trans
So, Chad, do you understand, like, this is kind of the essence of conservatism, right? Because it's not an investigation of what the science says, right? It's not an investigation of what the evidence says. It's not a medically, when we're talking about gender transition and we're talking about gender affirming care, this is something that comes from the medical field, and it is about reducing harm, right? Like, we find that gender affirming care massively reduces suicidality of people who are transgender, right? And this is an emerging area of medical practice. But you know what I support? I support what is medically considered to be the appropriate approach. And I believe that is how we should be deriving our opinions on this, which is I have a bias toward people having control of their, self-autonomy, self-expression. And yes, that does include teenagers. I don't think teenagers are the property of their parents up until the age of 18. I think they have some autonomy. I think they have the ability to understand some of these, the implications of some of these things. And I think that doctors and parents and children should be able to make decisions about their own body. For example, children can get tattoos with parental consent. Children can get boob jobs with parental consent. There's far more boob jobs going to cis girls under the age of 18 than there is gender affirming care for, you know, transgender people in this country. There's way more nose jobs. There's way more piercings. Let's stop for a second here, okay?
Men is because they do not have the ability to cooperate at a mental capacity when they're constantly undergoing hormone treatment, as well as depression pills, as well as different mood stabilizer pills. And so when you go out to combat, do you really think you're going to bring an ice cooler pack with your whether that be hormone estrogen or whatever it may be, while you're about to shoot someone of the opposing
Okay, first of all, this is childlike stupidity. Childlike stupidity. The first is, being trans doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a certain type of refrigerated hormone, number one. That's just number one. Number two, there are a lot of different roles in the Pentagon and in the military. Not every job in the military is frontline combat. Okay? That's number two. Number three, dumb fuck. There are plenty of conditions that require a maintenance amount of pills that people are allowed to, be in combat arms. Like, you're just discriminating against people. If they can effectually do the job, they should be permitted to do the job. It's not very complicated. Child brain.
The executive orders that Trump gave were DEIA orders that had to do with agencies that have nothing to do with the military.
Yes, they do. Yes, they absolutely do.
The FDA, they just revoked the ability of the Air Force to teach Air Force members about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Well,
what are we talking about here?
Okay, well,
honestly, like, they're rewriting history.
Well, that's your perspective, right? But at the end of the day, if a person...
Postmodern conservatism. This is what this is. This is called postmodern conservatism. Postmodern conservatism is basically the idea that I don't actually believe in anything. It's all about our perspective. Your perspective is that the Tuskegee Airmen existed. My perspective is that they aren't. They don't exist. And the truth is whatever the majority of people believe. Now, I don't believe in that. I believe the question of whether the Tuskegee Airmen existed is a factual question for which we can look at empirical reality to find out. We can go back and we can look for evidence to prove it or not prove it. The Tuskegee Airmen either existed or they didn't. But the conservative says it's whatever the consensus says. This is Orwellian. This is batshit fucking crazy talk. And this, by the way, this nihilism that this conservative is expressing, I want you to understand something, chat, that this is basically the philosophic equivalent of cyanide. Any society that imbibes this kind of pablum as their organizing political principle will kill itself. And you can see what's happening to America. America is committing suicide. America is in political collapse because these are the people in charge.
Tuskegee Airmen, we can all agree, existed, right?
Just listen to this. If you were
Wait,
racist,
he's not answering the question. Did they exist or not?
Right, and you were an employer, and if you wanted to absolutely be racist and exercise that, you would. I think DEI sort of prevents people from seeing the reality. If a person,
so wait a minute. Again, every single thing a conservative says is so fucking stupid. Every single thing a conservative says is so fucking stupid, and it's every time. The idea that, oh, a boss, if you really want to be racist, you can be racist, and there's nothing we can do about it, then what are you bitching about then? because you know these things are actually effective. We could see things like support for interracial marriage go up. We could see economically changes. This is there's a video at Innuendo Studios which is called I Hate Mondays. And it specifically addresses this conservative argument. And basically what I Hate Mondays means is that there are some things that are bad and bad things exist and we can't get around them. No matter how you set up the week, if you have days off and you have days where you work, there's going to be a first day of work in the week. So you can't avoid getting around a Monday, right? There's always going to be a Monday. And this logic is the most important belief for conservatives. Now, what is my counter argument to that? The answer is yes, there will always be a Monday. That's true. Bad things do happen, right? We can't make all bad things go away, but we can make a lot less bad things happen. We may not be able to stop. I'll give you an example. We may not be able to stop all gun violence, but when you engage in certain types of gun control, you get less gun violence. So it's worth doing that gun control to reduce that gun violence. You may not stop everybody from overdosing on opioids, but if you have, Narcan widely available, you can reduce the number of people who die from overdoses, right? So overdoses are still going to exist, but we can reduce the amount of harm through policy. Conservatives object to that. Conservatives think you can't stop all gun violence. Gun control doesn't work. You can't stop all overdoses. We shouldn't, spend money on Narcan, because if you have an overdose, you deserve to have an overdose. That's how conservatives think. And with that logic is taken to its extreme, you will live in a hell world, because we can never fix everything. We can never stop all diseases. Vaccines don't work 100% of the time, then I don't want to take a vaccine. That leads to more harm, more death, more destruction. And that's the logic this guy is spreading. That's why he's so fucking dangerous.
Person truly wanted to hire you based on your intellect, based on your skill set, they would. DEI essentially provides tax cuts for the end of the year. When you create your tax returns, they give you a tax credit.
What the fuck is he talking about? What the fuck is he talking about? I have never heard of this tax cut. I do my taxes all the time. I hire women. What is the DEI tax cut? Somebody tell me. What the fuck is this? I would love to. I would love to pay less taxes. Somebody tell me about this.
For hiring someone who is black or a person of color. I don't know if you knew that.
In these agencies?
In agencies and private
In government
businesses.
agencies, they don't get tax cuts for hiring people of color.
And the other thing I wanted
this is to protect people from discrimination.
The other thing I want to kind of state here is that I've realized that a lot of the times with the liberals is that you guys push for example, for DEI and people of Latino or Hispanic descent. And a lot of the times what you don't realize is you're actually doing more harm than good by putting them in positions where you make them believe that it's based on the color of their skin. It's based on...
DEIA is not
It's based on merit. DEI emphasizes color, skin color, physical attributes.
It says that the people who work in your agency, it's about anti-discrimination.
Discrimination against what?
Against people who may have different cultural mores, may have different...
But that's irrelevant to a job, right? It should be based on merit. And that's
the point, dumbass. They get discriminated against based on their skin color, so they don't get a chance. Or they get discriminated against based on their gender, so they don't get a chance. That they reach the standards, and then they get denied because they are not part of the majority. They're not a white, straight, cis man, so they get discriminated against. Do you know that women were not allowed to go to the military academies? And for example, in the Air Force Academy, the first class to accept women was the class of 1980. There were no women allowed at the Air Force Academy prior to the class of 1980. That means women were denied who could pass the physical requirements, who did really well in school. They were denied. And when you didn't have women, and the academies are where the most likely to succeed and get promoted in the military come from. Like the officers that are headed to become generals and colonels. Most of them Oftentimes, go to academies. Academies are the most prestigious, universities inside the military. So when women were denied academy status, they were denied the ability to advance. This is exactly what we're talking about. You are fucking stupid. And it's the same. And so women were just denied, based on their gender, their ability to work in these positions. That's what these programs are designed to overcome.
The emphasis
People
here.
get hired as a merit, but if the DEI,
not if you get a tax
I'm talking about Trump's rescission of these orders
on these agencies. If you received a tax cut as an employer, wouldn't you hire a person of color?
Dude,
if you could pay them less?
Listen, we're talking about government agencies that do not get tax cuts. They don't. Government agencies.
They don't.
No,
they do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about
every private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't pay taxes. Government agencies are funded by the government.
That is not true. That is not true.
I think like one of the things about interacting in politics, this is so you guys are all like omega lolling this. This is me every day. Right? This is me every day. People come in and reply to me dumbass shit, and this is what my brain is undergoing. People will be like, they'll just turbo stupidity 24/7. They've never read a book, and then they'll just comment on shit. Be like, I can't believe you're against NATO, Mike. NATO is a defensive alliance to protect our freedom. That's when I hear that, it's like you hearing government agencies pay taxes. Right? Like you are experiencing what I go through every single day. How do you feel? How is your brain feeling right now? Now imagine that happens 1,000 times a day.
True. And you know what? I think the whole juxtapose of this entire conversation.
What month is this?
This is January.
Okay, so we can agree on that. The FDA does not pay taxes. It does not get a tax cut because it doesn't pay taxes. DEIA forces them as an agency to say, if you have a job opening, you must do your best efforts to make sure that every
I like that.
part
I love
of
me
society.
A buzzword. You must do your best effort. I love that buzzword.
There's nothing. That's not what buzzword means. The painful tone of the guy is the worst thing. He's saying bullshit he believes are big issues, while the only problem is he's not even smart enough to be racist. He's just like what Sam Seder is saying is these initiatives are about including communities and qualified applicants from diverse communities. So if black people were traditionally not in, say, for example, aviation, going to black communities and offering mentoring programs to help build up the number of black men and black women that get into aviation is a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, right? You have these communities that were denied status. And then you have the Tuskegee Airmen. And then you set up the Tuskegee Airmen Association to go out into black communities and teach black kids about how, the proud tradition of the Tuskegee Airmen in aviation, so that they want to become pilots because they see other black people have succeeded and that they could be a part of this. An amazing opportunity. That is a DEI initiative. Why are you against that? You're only against that if you hate black people. And you don't want them in positions of authority because you're a racist. That's what you are fighting against. It's not very complicated.
Okay, pause.
Because you feel like you have to, you're pressured to.
Yes.
You shouldn't be pressured to hire someone based on skin color.
No, not to hire someone on skin color, but put up notice about that the job exists. Make sure that you put it in different communities so that you have as wide an application pool as possible.
And therefore you get tax
right.
cuts.
All right, return to
At
your
the
seat.
end of the year when you file taxes, you get a tax cut for hiring someone who speaks
Please
a different
return to your
language or
seat.
different skin color.
I don't know how to respond to that. How you doing?
So I want a little bit more clarification because I don't even know if we got it yet on which part benefits corporations, like from your perspective.
So agencies, the U.S. government agencies, the vast majority.
Okay, I think I know what this guy is trying to talk about. He's talking about the work opportunity tax credit. This doesn't include race. It's if you hire somebody who is somebody who's under the temporary assistance for needy families, a qualified veteran, a qualified ex-felon, a designated community resident, a vocation, which is a rural renewal county or an empowerment zone. So in other words, white people. Vocational rehabilitational referral. A person who has a physical or mental disability has been referred to the employer while receiving or upon a completion of rehabilitative services. A qualified summer youth employee. A qualified supplemental nutritional assistance program benefit recipient. A qualified supplemental security income recipient. A long-term family assistance recipient. Or a qualified long-term unemployment recipient. This isn't race. This is helping people who have hard times getting jobs get jobs. And it's a lot of this is hiring white people. And by the way, it doesn't apply to government because government doesn't pay taxes. The guy's just stupid.
Of them. What they function to do is inhibit corporations from essentially externalizing their costs onto society.
Sure.
So the example would be, I used it before, but it's a good one. I'm making Teflon, C8, for instance, okay? And C8 is supposed to be burned because instead of deposited because it's a forever chemical. And I can go out and instead of burning it, it's too expensive to burn it, I'm going to dump it into a river. And the EPA comes in and says, you can't do that. We're going to fine you. You're not allowed to do this. But what the company is doing when they do that is they're going to take the profits that come with lowering their costs by dumping it into the river. And those costs are then borne by everybody who lives around that river. They're going to get cancer. They're going to get gastrointestinal problems, whatever it is. And society bears the cost of that.
Can you connect the dots for me, though? Because it sounds like we're talking about something completely different.
And so the DEIA stuff is just the beginning of demoralizing these agencies and trying to wreck them from the inside. It's all part of Russell Vought's thing, the OMB, the whole Schedule F, where they get rid of civil servants and they demoralize people and they don't want them to be able to function.
So then would you agree if this is about demoralizing? I mean, over 75 million people voted for Trump, right? He won the popular vote. Do you not think that in part, you even said yourself that Americans don't really know what DEIA is, according to your definition of it?
Well, the government's definition of it.
Okay, well, I would argue that the average American is demoralized by what they've seen, the way that the government goes about their DEI policies and the.
Okay, this is the essence of what this. Okay, so here is the essence of why Donald Trump won. And he's correct. The average American is demoralized. And they're just striking out without much thought. And they voted for Donald Trump because he's the type of guy who pisses off the people that are the elites in their mind. He's kind of funny. He pisses off all the hoity-toity elites. And they're throwing a Molotov cocktail into Washington, D.C. because they're tired of how it just takes their money in taxes and never helps them. That is the essence of why they won. He's right about that. But the reality is actually advocating for Donald Trump is idiocy. The guy's a fucking moron and he's going to make things worse, dummy.
Military and other organizations, not just the military.
Please return to your seat.
Okay.
Hey, before we go any further, we want to take a moment to say thanks so much to Straight Arrow News by clicking.
A billionaire, a religious fundamentalist, or a xenophobic nationalist, voting for Trump was a mistake.
I mean, obviously true. Obviously true.
Okay, so let's tackle one aspect: religious fundamentalists. What benefit?
Wait,
would
is this guy back again, or is this, or am I just like hallucinating when I see like?
Religious fundamentalist get? And also, can you define what is a religious fundamentalist?
And maybe you could say more.
Oh my Jesus Christ! It's not complicated, man. It's not complicated. It's a very simple phrase. Religious fundamentalists, people that hew to a reactionary interpretation of their religion, which supposedly returns to an ancient interpretation and strict and adherence to the religious texts, an ancient interpretation that oftentimes doesn't actually exist, but is being proffered as a reaction to the liberalization of doctrines or the modernization of doctrines. It is a desire to return to a previous status quo in the religious practice. That's a religious fundamentalist, okay? Oftentimes, the return that they're trying to do never existed in the first place.
Like a Christian nationalist,
okay.
In this instance. But things like, you know, the attacks on trans folks, the attacks on a woman's right to choose, the idea that we're going to get stuff like an enhanced RFRA, which is going to mean that if you're a pharmacist and you don't want to provide birth control, you may not have to.
Don't you think you're assuming that
if you believe that public education, we should take that money and pour it into religious schools, you're gonna get a benefit out of a Trump administration?
Yeah, but don't you think you're assuming that the vast majority of Americans who are moderates?
Like, what do you think you're?
Moderate has been dropped. Moderate means abso-fucking-lutely nothing. Moderate means abso-fucking-lutely nothing. I will say that one more time. Moderate means abso-fucking-lutely nothing. Moderate voters are all over the ideological map, ideological position of eligible voters who self-identified as moderate. The vast majority of people who identify as moderate are left-wing, especially on economics. You know who they aren't? There's very few libertarians. This is the libertarian quadrant. This is the political compass kind of tilted. Very few people are fucking moderates. They don't know what it means. They just call themselves moderate. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
You're going to get out of the Trump administration?
Economic relief. That was
what kind of economic relief? They're going to cut Social Security. You're going to have to pay for your parents. They're going to cut when they go after the agencies like they're going after, right? This is outlined in Project 2025. Russ Vought, who's going to be the OMB head, he was the OMB head the first time around. He wrote all the book on this stuff.
Okay, well, you bring up Project 2025.
When you cut agencies and go after them, and you fire all the inspector generals so that they're not being able to make sure that the agencies are working, who do you think profits from that? It's corporations. They're going to go after agencies that make sure your food is not full of botulism, that your air is not full of mercury, that your water is not full of C8. This is what they're going to do. Agencies exist to curb corporations from externalizing their costs and privatizing their profits. So it may be cheaper for a company to dump their chemicals into a river than it is for them to dispose of it in a safe way. And so they get the profits from that, but the costs are borne by society. They're borne by society in the form of, like, people get cancer. They're borne by society in terms of, like, we've got to do the cleanup. That's what agencies do.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
That's good. Hey. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so I would like to touch on the religious fundamentalist aspect.
Yeah.
Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with religious fundamentalists? So, like, when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really more, I guess it's really theocrats, is that they want to impose their morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us, and I don't. But
morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference. So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
Well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay, so you're like a consequentialist? Utilitarian?
I don't really bother myself with being a consequentialist or a utilitarian.
It's always going to reduce you to a preference. So if you say that killing is wrong and I say it's right, you would really have no contention with that.
Well, no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society. Okay. We have laws that we have decided as a society in a democratic way. And for some people, it's okay for it to be informed by their religion. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if tomorrow society comes together and we say, hey, trans folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
No, I would be against it, but I mean, it would be
morally right under your view.
Not morally right. No. I'm not talking about morals.
Okay,
here.
so here's where I'm getting to, right? Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off.
Why one religion over another? Right? Like, why one arbitrary religion over another? And by the way, you use the example of killing. You can't be serious with Christian religion and saying killing is bad, right? Or Judaism and saying killing is bad. Like, what are you talking about? So I don't, this is you're just arbitrarily picking a religion because that's the one you were born into. It just so happened that you were lucky.
I believe you can have an ethical framework without religion.
And if we take the leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates. You have a reproductive...
What the fuck? The reproduction is lowest in Western countries. What are you talking about? Also, there's... What are you talking about, man? It's a problem of industrial capitalism that creates low birth rates.
Dead end, so two men together can't reproduce unless they have to take from a healthy straight couple. Religion provides this foundation where
what are you talking about? First of all, that's a technological engineering problem, right? Like, we could create artificial wombs, we could create surrogacy, we could create all sorts of ways of having people reproduce. I mean, honestly, we're working on putting genetic information from a sperm into an egg, like getting a donor egg and then taking out the genetic information from the donor egg and creating an egg using the genetic information of a man. And then you could have a man fertilize another man's egg. Like, there's all sorts of shit that we could do scientifically. This is not a fact of the universe. This is a biological contingency. What are you talking about? And by the way, a human being born of such a procedure would be just as valid as one from, sex.
do prioritize the nuclear family.
So do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem. I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good. Can you give me another justification for it?
Well, I think maybe that's the way they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
They may be, yeah.
Okay, so should we let a pedophile off the hook since they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society has decided...
Should implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between...
Well, first of all, I don't know that pedophiles are born that way, number one. Number two, even if they weren't, it would be a violation of the consent of a child because a child can't consent to sex. The two adults can feel romantic and familial love to each other, dedicate each other, they can love each other because they could consent. You know, like, pedophiles can't have a consensual relationship with a child. And yes, this is the world. We live in the world of creating expectations of behavior. You know, like this is what society is good. This is what makes society. Thank you, Vio. You gave me some oatmeal chat. Thanks, Vio. This is just like, it's like he's scared of the responsibility of trying to form society. Like he needs to, he doesn't trust himself. You know, he started licking his lips when he talked about pedophiles. I don't know. That's pretty weird. You know, he doesn't trust himself with consent. He doesn't trust himself with the responsibility of trying to find a just outcome.
Consenting adults, it's a different thing than...
Okay, so you're okay with a 45-year-old dad with a 19-year-old daughter as well? Incest?
No.
If they consent, you're okay with that?
No, I think society has also determined that it's like, it's not beneficial.
Right, there's duties and obligations that...
Okay, the reason why you don't have a daughter with father is called power dynamics, you dumb fuck. The fact that the father has such a control over the daughter and such influence over the daughter that it would be an inappropriate relationship. She couldn't fully consent, and she would have been groomed for fucking 18 years. Incest also creates the environment of other forms of abuse. Leaving aside the genetic risk, which is also a serious problem, incest is immoral because of those relationships. Now, if you create some hypothetical deranged edge case where you think you've justified it, the category is not worth exempting because there's not a liberty interest that is so compelling as to create an exemption. This is exactly the reality of law. Law is a balancing act. It always will be a balancing act. This is the baby's first time thinking about laws. Every law impugns some interest in favor of some other interest. That's why we have them.
That we have. So religion provides those duties. Life isn't about freedom and exercising what you want.
I mean, well, you want to impose your religious doctrine on me, and I don't want that.
You just admitted we need duties. We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your argument?
Well, first of all, I am not. First of all, that's not even true. Also, feel good can mean all sorts of things. God, this guy's so fucking stupid. Honest to God, I want this guy to go take some philosophy classes. Like, I think this guy could really, really use them because he's been miseducated. I think legitimately having some where he's not watching YouTube videos but actually has to read some books would do this guy some good. He'd memorize some like Christian apologia, and that's where his intellectual curiosity ended. And honest to God, like if he thinks that we haven't figured out how to argue against incest, this must be a Destiny viewer.
What's my argument as to why I don't want
you have no
your
contention.
religion to... Well, because first of all, I don't think that you have the right to corner what God is telling us is right or wrong. And there are differences between religions. And so my argument is, you know, like you're not going to keep halal or kosher, right? I mean, I don't believe that someone has a corner on religious truth. And the reason why we have a democracy is because we didn't want a king. And the kings came from the idea that their God said that they're the ones who's supposed to be king. And so we can disagree on this. I don't want to live in a country that is ruled by religious fundamentalism.
And if I do, you have no issue with that.
And no. And this is why I say under Trump, yes, you have won.
Yes.
You have a
Only
bunch
male
of Christian.
and female. You're right.
You have a Christian nationalist,
Yes,
and
which is necessary.
And so I concede the point that under Trump, your Christian nationalism has gained an advantage under this.
Sorry, we're going to have more kids. We're going to have less abortions. We're going to have more family. We're going to have stable family households. Sorry about better education.
People, gay people should be outlawed.
They should be straight. They should be straight.
Women should be secondary to their husbands.
Women should submit to the husbands.
Women
that doesn't mean that doesn't mean they are slaves.
Right,
it doesn't mean they are slaves. It means they are protected. Okay, let me ask you then. Let me ask you.
No.
Should women be drafted? Should women be drafted?
Listen, I think
if they're equal, should they be drafted?
I think this is the vision that you have, and I think Trump supports it.
Yes.
I think the Christian nationalists he has throughout his government are all going to work towards your vision.
Yes.
And my hope is that when people look at this, they say, hey, wait a second. I don't want my life to be dictated by the notion of a Christian nationalist prescription. Now, you may win out. I mean, certainly, like if you look at a country like Iran, they have a theocracy there, and that. And apparently that's, good for them if they want it.
My final point is whenever
but I don't want to live in a
My final point is whenever we see people live out Christian values to its full extent, we see a great society. When we see people deviate from that, that's where all the problems arise.
All right.
I think you are at home in the Trump. Trump
Thank you very much.
You've been voted out. Please return to your seat.
Sorry, guys. I think I have an issue with
this like run to the chair thing seems kind of stupid because it's dependent upon who gets closest to the chair. Like if you have to run around the table, that's pretty unfair. This is dumb as fuck.
the implications of the prompt. I mean, of course, I'll stick on the religious fundamentalism. I think it's unfair to view Christianity separated from the ideology that Christianity informs, right? You have an ideology that you vote upon because you view it to be the truth that benefits everyone in a society. That's how a democracy works. I, as a Christian, have an ideology that informs my opinions, and I believe that it is the most moral and correct way for a society to function. So I think if we put religious fundamentalism in a box where you say any moral implications that I draw from this, religion is unable to be voted upon, unable to be pushed onto you because simply it's a religion, is unfair to view it that way. Religion is an ideology like all ideologies are. You have.
He's dumb as fuck. Like, legitimately, what could you even say to these people? They're so stupid. How do you even, honestly, it's good to watch this because talking to conservatives is a painful experience every time. And this is the kind of random gish gallopy vile just pablum that they spew up that doesn't even have coherence. There's nothing coherent about what he's saying. Oh, religion is like an ideology like any other religion. First of all, Christianity is a meaningless phrase. I want you to understand that, chat. There are so many sects of Christianity which believe completely opposite things on every major point. There are some sects of Christianity which believe that everybody should be a nudist and we should go back to Adam and Eve, where we celebrate Jesus by rejecting modern society's corruption. They're called Adamites. There's sects of Christianity that believe that Mormonism is not Christianity. That sect is called the Catholic Church. You have evangelical Christians who believe that what you do in the world doesn't matter for your soul. Other sects of Christianity believe you have to do good works. You have to follow Jesus's teachings in reality, in the world. You have to, you have to tend to the sick and feed the hungry and clothe the naked, etc. They don't like the Adamites because the Adamites aren't the naked. Tesla's down 10%. Oh my God. The guy who runs Jubilee made this movie.
My own lifetime.
What's the thing you're obsessed with these days?
K-pop.
K-pop. South Korea is a trendsetter.
South Korea.
South Korea.
South Korea.
South Korea.
Clips of people saying South Korea. What the fuck is this?
Very
shit?
good as a Korean people of putting on the proper image of what looks good on the outside.
처음에 보고 깜짝 놀래. 저도 밤에 해보고요. 와, 이제 낮에 보는 세상이 아니에요.
한국에는요, 성매매는.
Guys, prostitution exists. I'm making a surprise. Guys, did you hear that the oldest profession exists?
You vote away.
I don't mind you. I don't dispute the idea that you could have a religious ideology and want to see it imposed upon others, and it's not inconsistent with my claim. My claim is that Donald Trump is ushering in an element of Christian theocracy that I can't remember his name, Alesia, and you may be excited about, but I'm not excited about it. I don't think the vast majority of Americans are, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't think this country was set up to be a theocracy, and I find it problematic that it will be, but others will be happy about it.
I think it's unfair as well to label any moral.
Tesla's crashing out. Oh my God, dude. I'm so mad at oh my God, dude. Why did it have to crash today? I was literally going to sell Tesla like today. I set up my account yesterday. I was literally going to short Tesla today after stream. Like, come on, man. Like, come on. Come on. It's down $29 today. Come on. Why didn't you short this morning? I was just doing my stream. I was just doing my God, dude. It's down 40% year to date. 40% year to date. Holy shit. If we go to the swearing in, it's down like fucking almost 50%. That's crazy, dude. Elon might actually lose Twitter if it goes low enough. How low would it need to go before Twitter, like his ownership share at Twitter becomes untenable?
That comes from religion inherently immediately theocratic, like having a theology.
You always say you should have shorted something and you never do it. I know it's honestly because I don't have an active brokerage account, like a discretionary brokerage account, but I'm changing that. I don't want to bet. I don't like to make bets, but sometimes you can just tell when things are going to happen. So I'm going, I used to have a discretionary brokerage account back in the day. And I made a lot of money off the 2008 crash. That's how I paid for my undergrad. And I'm feeling like I shorted Goldman Sachs. But I was broke basically. I didn't have any more money because I was like doing leftist shit. But using the same excuse since years ago, I know. I literally opened an account yesterday. I literally did it. I did it. So I'm gonna figure something out.
Theocracy is something different than having.
I think love thy neighbor is a good precept,
Right.
and I don't know that we should necessarily legislate it, but I think it's a good precept.
Cool.
I think there are things from religion that are good.
Yeah.
I interviewed Desmond Tutu years ago, who said that religion can be. Is like a knife. It can be used to spread butter, or it could be used to stab people.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that I want religious doctrine to be the same as the law of the land. We have a democracy,
Sure.
and it was founded on trying to get out
Right.
from some type of like religious oppression,
Yeah.
which means one religion shouldn't dominate in this country. That's my sense.
Yeah, and I see that, but I think I have an issue with where you would perceive religious doctrine is derived from, right? A guy doesn't, at least in Christianity, a guy doesn't go in a room and come out and say that he has a secret message from God that everyone now has to follow. Religious doctrine is ruled over, it's reasoned over, the same way any ideology is discovered.
I'm not talking about the validity of religious doctrine.
Right.
I'm talking about religious doctrine supplanting democracy and civil society.
Well, and I'm saying that religious doctrine is democratic inherently, and in the way that you.
Well,
earlier,
I mean, look, we can have a debate as to whether or not women should be subservient to men.
Right.
I don't think they should be,
Right.
and in a democracy, I don't think it's healthy.
Right, but when you said earlier with him that someone shouldn't have I don't know the exact word, like a chokehold on what is, religious truth and what isn't religious truth, that's not how religious truth itself works, and that's not how religious truth is.
That's what you guys want. You want to impose your religious belief in this kind of like bastardized version of conservative Christianity, which doesn't even mean anything. Right? Is conservative Christianity Baptist, or is conservative Christianity Southern Baptist, or is it Catholic? Like, what is it? They believe different things, dummy. So which version of Christianity are we picking as the version of Christianity? Like you are trying to pretend like there's some sort of universal religious truths, and there aren't. They don't agree on shit. Hindus don't eat cows. Muslims and Jews don't eat pork. Like, what do you want? Like, what religion are we going to follow and why? American Christianity seems to be genuinely satanic. It is. It's the Antichrist. Southern Baptism is the anti-Christian religion. All the Southern Baptists want to do is destroy humanity. It is a seriously, they want, okay, the reason why we have so much problems with Israel, let's be honest, okay? Let's be honest for a second. It isn't Jewish conspiracy. It is Southern evangelical Christians are trying to force Jews back to Israel so that they can have the apocalypse. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get Jews back to Israel to rebuild the temple so there'll be an apocalypse. So they could go and be raptured. This is literally what they believe. They're trying to cause global thermonuclear war. Not enough people talk about this, but this is the reality. Southern Baptist Christians, Southern evangelicals are trying to cause the world apocalypse. That's why the United States of America needs to be disarmed. That's why the United States of America needs to be contained. If you're a European and you don't know this, you are fucking up. For the love of God, you need to form a new bloc, ally with China, whatever it takes, contain the United States. For the longest time, we had these people under control. They're out of control. They are out of control. They are in the levers of power, and they will kill us all. You need to do whatever you can to contain this country.
Is brought to the political table to have that work either, right?
I don't know. When Pete Hegseth is in a bar yelling, we're going to kill all Muslims.
Well, that's, yeah.
But now he's in charge of the largest military in the history of the world. I think, and he's informed by his Christian nationalism. I think that,
Sure. But have you considered somebody who wants to have there's 6 trans kids in Utah?
It's a problem.
Right. Well, but
we can disagree on
Yeah,
that.
we don't take.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
Thanks,
Please
Sam.
return to your seat.
Okay, so Eleazar mentioned his views on gay marriage, and I saw that you believe that essentially conservatives don't believe that gay marriage should be allowed. I want to ask everybody in this room, is there any law or legislation that Donald Trump has passed to prohibit same-sex marriage in the last 4 years? Okay. Is there anyone in here who would potentially oppose two people kissing in public that are of the same sex? You could raise your hand if you want. Yes, in public.
Yeah, but this is also, by the way, this is also a bunch of young people. This isn't conservative. This isn't a representative of conservatives as a whole. Why is this guy back? There's 20 people here. Why is this guy back again? Can we get somebody else to speak?
In public. No law against it. Just your own opinion. Okay, so these are all people's opinions, right? The same way you have your opinions about Christians is the same way these people are allowed.
No, I don't have a problem with Christians.
Well, you do not believe that theology should be at its
We should not have a theocracy.
Correct. And so what I'm saying,
that's not an opposition to Christianity, you dumb, illiterate fuck. Why did they pick this guy to represent them? He's dumb. Do you think Elon shut down Twitter while Tesla stocks plummet? I don't know what happened then.
is I think that Christianity, I'm a Catholic, I think that Christianity is, fundamentally very important to instill family values in myself as well as every person who wants to have children. Now let's talk about...
I'm okay with that too.
Let's talk about Order 14,166. That is an executive order that Donald Trump just imposed on identifying what is male and female. So I personally believe, as well as many transsexuals, friends of mine, believe that a woman is a biological female, as well as a man being a biological male. You are assigned what you are at birth. You are not assigned your gender later on. What you choose to express is something that is similar to wearing a garment, similar to what you decide to put on your face. And I don't think there should be laws or legislations dictating people or imposing laws to manipulate children, for example, to castrate their bodies at such a young age. 50% of children...
Do you know how many children are treated over the past 5 years? Let's say, I think it was from 2018 to 22, there was a study that just came out from Harvard. Do you know how many children received gender-affirming care, but broken down into puberty blockers and then hormones?
Give me the numbers.
You tell me. I'm curious.
Well, I'm curious because you're bringing it up.
No, I have the numbers.
Okay, tell me.
I do, but I'm curious if you know.
Tell me what the numbers are.
I promise to tell you after you tell me what you think it is.
I'm not gonna play that game.
Because
I'm not going to play the game where I try to guess.
I have a feeling
we're not playing this game.
No, I am playing this game because
Why?
I think you think it's much higher. When you tell me that kids are being castrated, I know you don't really know what these numbers are. And I do know these numbers.
Okay, well, I can tell you this much.
What?
It was reported that scientifically every single child who has received gender-affirming care, about roughly 50% of them regret it. And 50% of them are suicidal because of it. They're actually more depressed because of it.
How many of those kids? How many?
A psychologist,
How
by the
many
way.
over the course of 5 years?
Well, tell me.
You tell me.
Tell me.
Just give me
I know
a
what you're trying to do. You're trying to put me in this chokehold of like,
no, I'm
I
not trying to
gotcha
put you in a
moment.
No, this is definitely a gotcha moment because I'm suggesting to you that you think this problem is much bigger than it is.
It is a huge problem.
Okay.
Medi-Cal, you know, Medi-Cal covers inmate trans women.
I understand that, yes. And I know one person has had that surgery.
I don't understand how my taxes should go for an inmate prison.
So one person in a city, in a state of 50 million people. One person? I'm sorry, 40 million people? A state with 40 million people. One person. And I'm supposed to care? Meanwhile, you're fucking destroying Social Security, which keeps 3/4 of fucking old people out of poverty. This is unbelievable. Like, this is the thing. He's starting to scream because he knows he's a dumbass.
Who wants to transition?
Well, I think because we got to do health care for prisoners, and you don't consider it real health care. But
Gavin
hold on, I don't want to get...
imposed $2.6 billion
it's
in
900 kids
2022.
over 5 years.
That is a lot of children.
Puberty blockers.
That is a lot of children.
900 kids over
547 just passed, including gender identity. Gender identity to...
You got to make this guy stop talking. The thing is, if I were Sam Seder, like, Sam is doing some bangers here, but the guy's talking over him. So here's what I would suggest if I was Sam. If I was Sam, I would say, hey, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and then I'm going to respond. If you interrupt me, I'm going to replace those glasses of yours. You look like the fucking secretary from Ghostbusters. So just sit down, shut the fuck up, and we'll both get our points out.
Allow children to be separated from their parents just due to not affirming their gender identity.
But here's the point. Listen, Trump how is he hurting these people? He just rescinded the ability of the Labor Bureau.
Oh, there's the fact check. It said, data compiled by Reuters and the health technology company Komodo found that from 2017 to 2021, 4,780 adolescents started puberty blockers and had a gender dysphoria diagnosis. A new study from the Journal of the American Medical Association of Pediatrics found that only 0.1% of young patients in the study were transgender and prescribed puberty blockers or hormone therapy. It basically is a microscopic population. It's a microscopic population. Our study found that overall, very few TGD youth access gender-affirming care, which is surprisingly low given that over 3% of high school youth identify as transgender. Among those who do, the timing of care aligns with the standards outlined by the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, the Endocrine Society, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. And the number one people that use puberty blockers were trans men. A 2024 study led by researchers at Harvard Chan School and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare Institute documented the rarity of gender-affirming surgeries among adolescents. Very little is known about hormone use among transgender and gender-diverse adolescents. The researchers analyzed private insurance claims data from 2018 to 2022, representing more than 5.1 million young patients ages 8 to 17. They identified transgender or gender-diverse patients based on gender-related diagnoses and then checked if they had received puberty blockers or gender-affirming hormones. They calculated the rate of adolescents who are TGD and receiving this care per 100,000 privately insured adolescents according to age and sex assigned at birth. The study found that less than 0.1% of minors with private insurance are TGD and receive puberty blockers or gender-affirming hormone treatment. No TGD patients under 12 were prescribed gender-affirming hormones. None. No children under 12. Not one. Not one. So in other words, we're talking about a couple hundred teenagers. Use of puberty blockers and gender-affirming hormones was more common among TGD adolescents assigned female sex at birth than those assigned male sex at birth. So in other words, you know, men in women's sports is basically zero nationwide. See, but if you're a liberal, you need to go after these. You need to go after these couple hundred kids. And people want to talk about this shit. People want to talk about this shit. And yet there is example after example. A couple hundred children over a decade who are adolescents. There isn't example after example, you dumb fuck. There isn't. That's why you don't bring them up, you dumbass piece of shit.
How is he hurting these people? He just rescinded the ability of the Labor Bureau to investigate discrimination in workplace. Are you for trans people being discriminated in workplace?
They're never being discriminated.
Are
Hold on.
you for trans people being discriminated with housing?
I'm very passionate about that question, and can I answer it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I believe that affirmative action should be...
It's not affirmative action.
Oh, then what is it?
It's anti-discrimination. It's
Okay,
not saying that you have to hire trans people.
Okay,
it's
well,
saying you can't fire someone when you find out they're trans.
Okay, well, hold on a minute. So when you hire someone, or when you interview someone, for example, you are supposed to interview them based on their knowledge and their work ethic, not based on sex.
I'm not saying affirmative
not based
action.
on their sexual
Are you
orientation.
This guy is like, again, this is actually one of the crises that you do face in political discussions, which is that a lot of people are just really, really stupid. Right? So when you're making some sort of sophisticated argument, you're already losing the majority of people right off the bat. The moment you're going beyond like 1 or 2 sentences, you've lost the majority of people. And it's not because they're not capable of understanding. They just are not educated or expected to care. Because that's our system does not require, our citizens to actually be intelligent political actors. It's not that they can't. It's that they just aren't.
To fire them if you find out they're trans.
If you need to, then you should. If you need to, then you should.
So we have a disagreement. I don't believe people should be discriminated against.
Pause.
And that's not discrimination. It's based on your knowledge.
If you fire someone for being trans, that's discriminating against them for being trans. If you fire someone for being black, that's because you're discriminating against them for being black. What are you talking about?
What you sleep with, not who you sleep with. Just saying.
Oh, thank God.
Hi.
We have somebody else than those two dumb fucks.
So I actually think that this liberal world order needs to be thrown away completely.
Oh. You're a woman in spaghetti straps! You're a woman in spaghetti straps! You have a nose piercing! I legitimately, it's so funny to listen to conservatives. You are the physical embodiment of liberal cosmopolitanism. Are you a virgin?
And I think Christian nationalism would be a good alternative. What we're seeing right now is just
congratulations.
Yeah, and thank you. And yeah, I think what we're seeing right now
is ass motherfucker.
It's a culture of death. This is the most suicidal generation ever. We have millions of children dying by abortion. People aren't even reproducing. We don't even have like a.
Should we mandate people reproduce?
No, I don't think we need to mandate. We can just stop them from killing their kids.
You want to outlaw abortion?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, we have a fundamental disagreement on this, and my claim was that if you voted for Trump, it would be to your benefit if you want to outlaw abortion.
I think it would benefit.
He said, unless you're a billionaire, a fundamentalist or a xenophobic nationalist, voting for Trump was a mistake. And she's saying, no, being a religious fundamentalist is good. The premise is, like, of course, like, what? They're too stupid to understand the premise.
Everyone.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that that women should have the right to choose.
I think that it would benefit everyone to bring back the family unit, to stop having women just thrown into the workforce.
Maybe we shouldn't allow women to choose to divorce unless their husbands say it's okay.
I mean, I don't really believe in divorce in general, so, like, sure.
All right. I mean, this I think, though, reinforces my point that if you are
but it would be better for society. It would be better for everybody in society. And same with xenophobic what's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
To be xenophobic, nationalism is better.
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture. We should have assimilation.
Which, do you get to choose what the culture is?
We already have a dominant culture.
What is
based
the dominant
on European
culture?
and Christian values and identity. That is the dominant culture.
White Christian.
It's rooted in European identity.
By the way, does she not know what xenophobic means? I don't think she knows what xenophobic means. This is, again, a long time ago, I have this phrase. And this is another example of Mike is right. I say that every conservative is either fucking ignorant or evil. I literally don't think she knows what xenophobic means.
White, so your argument is that
has been the dominant culture.
Just to be
and
clear,
we're not letting people assimilate to that. We're saying you should keep your culture, and this is why our culture.
Assimilation. A xenophobe doesn't believe in assimilation. A xenophobe doesn't believe in assimilation. Are you confused? A xenophobe has extreme hatred and prejudice toward foreign people and races. They don't believe in assimilation. That's why they're called xenophobic. Xeno meaning other.
You're so divided.
Your argument is that Trump is good for those who want a dominant white European culture.
I mean, that is what America is. It's rooted in European identity and Christian values. That's what it has been. Would you really disagree with that? What is it then, if that's not the identity of America?
Well, I think the identity of America...
For the majority of time, America's been a country. You don't think that's been the identity?
Well, actually, no, I think
Actually, America was founded as a secular state. What made America strong is that we had a secular, no religious test. We had freedom of conscience. That's what made America a strong country, because people could come here, whether they were Protestant or Catholic, and they could leave behind the sectarian violence of Europe, you dumb fucking... actually brain dead. Actually brain dead. There were 100 years wars. There were religious wars between the Catholic Church and various denominations of Protestantism. There were religious wars between Christian countries and Muslim countries. There was vast persecutions of Jewish populations. And people said, hey, we're tired of living in that world. We're tired of people being killed over what they believe in their heart. So we're going to create a society where you have freedom of conscience, where we can't deny you position based on your religion alone. That's the entire point of America. It is a liberal society. And it's not a conservative theocracy, you fucking dumbass. Like, Jesus Christ, this is basic ass shit. I thought you guys liked the founding fathers. I guess you forgot to read.
The identity of America has been, for better or for worse, a melting pot in that regard.
Yeah, maybe since like the 1960s. Even then, even we...
This is one of the things that kind of is funny, because it's like America has a melting pot of Catholics, of Germans, of Irish, of Italians, of Scots and Brits and Frenchmen and all sorts of waves of European immigrants from Scandinavia. Have you ever been to Minnesota? It's all. Then we had a huge flood of Chinese immigrants. We had the of course the slave trade and the millions of Africans that were brought in this country. This country has literally always been an amalgam. From its very, 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 very essence, it's always been an amalgam.
We had this idea of a melting pot literally means assimilation too. It means melting. It means
it doesn't. When you melt everything together, you create a new alloy, which is different than the base metals. Like, that's the whole point of melting, because it changes both metals into a new thing. That's what melting pots are for.
Assimilating to the dominant
But,
culture. Is that not what melting means?
No, it doesn't
and
mean
now
that
instead we're saying there's something wrong with
the dominant
xenophobia.
culture. No. I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. Like,
I think people don't know anything about metallurgy, so these analogies that used to make sense with people who had a little bit more like knowledge of how material reality works, like they've kind of forgotten what these things. They think of melting pot as like chocolate or something. I don't know. They don't really know about metals and forming like bronze. You know, you take copper and you take what? Bronze. Bronze is copper and tin, right? And so what happens is you take copper, which is soft, and you take tin, which is soft, and then you alloy them together and you form bronze. And bronze is much harder than either of the constituent elements. So you've made something new that is better. That is what melting pot is supposed to mean. It means you throw in the things from all over the world, and what comes out the other end, what you pour into the fucking form, is a new alloy, which is different. Both sides are different, not just the one side. That is what is supposed to be America. That's the analogy, you dumb fuck. She thinks a melting pot is a fondue dip to cover other things, so they are all coated in the same thing. Yeah, she thinks of the melting pot as going to fucking Melting Pot, the fondue restaurant, and dipping, you know, brownies in white chocolate. That's what she thinks it is.
Like, you and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. It's a choice. And people, I think what you're expressing, though, is really what the Trump movement at its heart is about. And I think that's problematic.
I disagree. I don't think Trump's like anywhere close to being a Christian nationalist. That's ridiculous. Like, Trump's basically a Democrat from like 15 years ago when it comes to social issues.
So you don't think that he's conservative enough for you?
Oh, definitely. Nowhere close. No.
And he just banned abortion. All his appointees just banned abortion. And he's like ripping up all sorts of government programs and arresting people for criticizing Israel.
No.
He's not xenophobic enough for you?
No, he's trying to import a bunch of H-1Bs. Are you kidding?
Right. Oh, so you want to get them out too? Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're making my argument for me.
All right.
Well,
okay.
I'm just saying he's not even in this. Okay.
I mean, I know I stopped and I talked about the melting pot thing for too long, but I think it is kind of quintessential, a quintessential example of how dumb conservatives are now. Conservatives are literally brain dead fucking morons. And they use analogies and words and they don't know what they mean.
My next claim is the GOP will destroy.
My reaction is like, if I were to run into a woman like that, I would say like, why are you talking about politics? You believe women shouldn't have political takes. Sit down and shut the fuck up. Demonstrate your ability to be quiet. You're advocating that all women should be forced to be quiet. How about you start with yourself and show me how it's done?
Social Security and health care. Nice to see you.
So my 25-year-old conservative family member asked what shrapnel is and can't find Mexico on a map. Oh no.
What if Social Security should go away? That's my question to you.
Because Social Security keeps 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. And not only does it keep our elderly out of poverty, it's essentially a social insurance program that protects you if at the end of your life you don't have enough money to survive.
For
And
right
so-
now, do you know that it's also the albatross around our generation's neck?
No, it isn't.
Okay, so
Let me just explain this.
Well, you're
Let me
going to
explain
go
this to you.
back to lecturing
No,
me about Social
because-
Security.
Well,
we don't
that's
have.
what we're talking about. Social
Yeah,
Security.
Social Security is one of the top 3 funded.
Social Security is almost the biggest thing that our government does.
Exactly, and we are
it
more than
keeps
$30 trillion in debt.
2/3 of our- well, first of all, Social Security cannot contribute legally to the deficit.
Because they don't even account it in the federal deficit
That's
every year.
correct.
We have
because
30
it's
years.
self-funding. When Social Security started in 1936, you have more workers than retirees because people haven't entered into retirement. By 1970, it was at 3.5 to 1. Now it's at 2.5 to 1. But productivity has increased during that time, so the amount of money paid into Social Security has been up there. The reason why we are running out of money just for the trust fund, not for Social Security, like I say, if we do nothing with Social Security now, it is statutorily unable to contribute to the debt. The math is right there. The reason why the trust fund is running out is because wealth inequality has hoarded so much money above the cap.
You don't think it's because
So
the
if you-
government does a
no,
terrible job managing their money?
no.
They have a.
What the fuck? You're so stupid. You're so stupid. One of the things that's really incredible is we've already tested this, right? We have 401ks, and you know what happens with 401ks? The vast majority of people do not save enough money to retire in a 401k. The people at the very top, you know, the top couple percent, they do great with 401ks. But everyone else, and IRAs, they are not effective for the vast, vast majority of people to survive in retirement. They just aren't. Social Security is the majority of, I think, a plurality of seniors' income. Like, these are people who just don't know what they're talking about at all.
Huge
Not at
spending
all.
problem, and they go, oh, look
No,
at all this money
they
we have
knew
for
this in
Social Security
1983.
that's earmarked for 60 years from now that we're just going to spend on something
40
right
years
now.
ago, they predicted this. This is an actuarial table. Accountants sit there and look at it. This is a very easy math problem.
Accountants in the
If
government
you-
are always right? That's totally the thing that you're saying? That they're always correct about money, right? That's why we have a $40 trillion debt problem.
The problem isn't the math with the 40 trillion debt problem. It's the you have tax
It's the
cuts and you
spending
spend-
problem. I totally
Yes.
agree with you, which
Social
I would argue is
Security-
part of why Social Security's gone in the hole already.
That's simply not true.
Oh, okay. So we're out of money from
If
the
the
Social
trust-
Security bucket.
No. Statutorily, by that I mean by law, Social Security pays for itself. If we do nothing, the 6.2% that your employer and your employee pays into it will pay out 78% of benefits starting in 2033.
And why is
But
it going
we
down?
raise
If
the
everything's
cap-
so much better, why
if
is it
we
only
raise the
78%?
cap- If we raise the cap, there's a cap right now at $176,000. So for instance, if you make $100,000, you pay $6,200 into that.
A year,
But
yeah.
a year. But if you make $4 million, do you know how much money you pay into Social Security?
Less than that.
$6,200.
And so why should wealthy people hang on? Why should wealthy people pay a higher percentage?
No, they should pay
No
the
way! They pay lower percentage, you dumbass! Yeah, that's how math works! You stupid shit! The rich pay a lower percentage. This is how math works, you dumb peasant! Every single conservative is ignorant or evil. Every single one. I have never encountered a conservative that doesn't fall in one of those buckets. Sometimes they're both, but I've never met a good conservative because they can't exist.
the same percentage. 6.2 on $400,000, 6.2 on $1 million.
And why should they pay even more money at all? Because they make more money? Again, you fundamentally...
Yes, they can afford it. It's called the diminishing marginal utility of money. The more money you have, the less money helps you. So you can afford to pay more for the maintenance of society so that people aren't on the streets killing your ass because they can't survive. You want to have a stable society? then you need to provide for people in that society. If a large group of people are sitting there dispossessed, they're going to pick up weapons and start killing your ass. That's called a revolution. That's why they provide social security, because they're trying to prevent people from standing up and killing the rich. Let's be honest. And why do they deserve it? Because rich people become rich by exploiting others. Rich people do not become rich by the sweat of their own brow. It's because they own capital and they take the wages doesn't cover the profit that the worker generates. So society has this productivity and we give the ownership to the rich who own the means of production. That's capitalism. Well, to have a society that's functioning, you need redistribution, or else what? They're going to kill your ass. Everybody understands this. Who's ever studied history, they understand that these concessions were made to the workers because the workers are the ones who produce all value. And diminishing marginal utility of money, it means that if I have $1 billion, another dollar going to me doesn't change my fucking life at all. I don't even notice it. But if you give that dollar to somebody who's broke on the street, that might get them a food to survive to the next day. So when you're thinking of where should we raise money for the necessary functions of maintenance of society, you should go to people who have a lot of it because they're going to miss it the least. It's not complicated at all. It's very straightforward and economically based.
You fundamentally have this idea that because somebody, okay, you have
Tesla's
an idea
now
that
down
because
13%.
somebody makes more money, that's fundamentally wrong, right?
No, I don't think it's fundamentally wrong. I think that they should pay more taxes into it. Now, I do think as a society, we should not allow billionaires. So, for instance,
they can pay more taxes generally, but why should they?
The highest tax rate was and the greatest expansion of our economy.
Hang on,
in this
does a
country?
billionaire get more money from Social Security if they went to go take it than I would?
No,
of course not. So why should they pay more?
I'll tell you what. Because it is a social insurance program that keeps you from being in poverty when you're a senior. And the reason why I think billionaires should pay more taxes than other people, even a higher percentage, is because it works better for society. The greatest expansion we've had in this country in terms of economics and the least amount of wealth disparity was in the 40s and 50s and 60s in this country. Do you know what the top marginal rate was?
It was high.
Do you know what it was?
I don't know the exact number, but
if
90%.
You made over $470,000 in 1955, every dollar you would make above that was taxed at 90%.
So I have a question.
90 cents on every dollar was taxed above 470. So if we had in today's dollars,
which is wild, by the way. But
and it's also the greatest expansion we had of the economy.
Yeah, you can expand for a time, and then you see places. You see like Nordic countries that were like, oh, let's tax the hell out of our rich people, right? And then they go, whoops, we messed up. We can't actually live off of our terrible. We basically are able to live off our economic boom that they had between like the 40s and the 90s, and then we have to revert all of that because we made a terrible choice and we were able to have a party for 50 years.
What the fuck is he talking about? They continue to have the highest human development in the world. What the fuck are you talking about? And also, conservatives winning an election because of the Great Recession and then doing some cutting of some benefits is not the same thing as, oh, we're going to stop doing Nordic stuff. Like, what are you talking about?
Until we realized we ran through all the money that capitalism got us. So let me ask you real quick.
What?
So
the Nordics have, Norway has a multi-trillion-dollar surplus. What are you talking about? They have a sovereign wealth fund. They have government-owned enterprise that owns trillions of dollars. They don't have debt in Norway. They have trillions of dollars saved. What are you talking about? They have $1.738 trillion saved. The Government Pension Fund of Norway is the sovereign wealth fund collective owned by the government of Norway. It consists of two entirely separate sovereign wealth funds, the Government Pension Fund Global and the Government Pension Fund Norway. As of March 2025, it had $1.738 trillion in assets. and held on average 1.5% of all of the world's listed companies, making it the largest single sovereign wealth fund in terms of total assets under management. This translates to $325,000 per Norwegian citizen. It also holds portfolios of real estate and fixed income investments. Many companies are excluded by the fund on ethical grounds. So in Norway, they have $325,000 saved for every Norwegian citizen. And he says it doesn't work, ladies and gentlemen.
The average person, right? Right now, they fundamentally look at Social Security, young people like me, and they go, I'm going to have that money sitting, waiting for me when I retire. Since your opinion is whatever works best for the average person is better, wouldn't you rather shift towards something that I would agree with, which is getting people that are 19, 20 years old into funding their own retirement rather than relying on other people to fund it for them?
Like the 401k.
Sure. Well, not just the 401k, but IRAs, any other type of retirement. Would you agree? Would we agree with that?
Social Security was set up as part of a three-legged stool where back in the day when I was a kid, we had defined benefit pensions, where you'd know how much money you would get out. Yeah. That all shifted in the 80s to defined contribution, where you know how much you put in. The 401k started during that Reagan era. It has been a disaster because the fact of the matter, for better or for worse, people just don't save in the way that you're talking about.
Why?
It would be nice if they could.
If the government were changing the mindset and actually pushing that culture.
Does this guy have a job? Let me see the 401k. Let me see his 401k.
Shift towards, we're not just going to hand you money when you're 65. You have to plan for it right now.
We've had a 40-year experiment
with
that.
You paid it. You paid the money in. It's not handing you money. It's you paid money in to fund the old people when you were working, and now you get the money when you're done. It's not handing. It's called society. It's sort of like when we give a child a bottle, we don't say, why are we giving you that milk for free? You don't deserve your mother's milk. Get a job. We do it because we realize that's how society needs to function. It's a deal we all make with each other. What are you talking about?
The government affecting the cultural mindset, and it failed.
We've had a 40-year experiment of everybody. You know what my parents say? Do you know what grandparents say? They go, well, I'm just waiting for my social security check to come in, rather than I have $800,000 waiting for me because I thought about it when I was 19 and 20.
For $800,000 isn't enough to survive. Are you dumb? Are you actually dumb?
I didn't have this grab bag of money waiting for me. You're assuming that
By the way, do you understand that the value of a Social Security, like, does he understand how much it's actually worth? Does he understand how much money you actually get?
I try and tell my kids.
So we agree. We should get rid of Social Security and phase it out. Well, no. So we should phase out. How would you listen to this idea? You phase out Social Security to where people who have 5 years left before they retire get 100% of the benefits, and then people like me who have 40 years until we retire, I'm not going to get it. I'm going to get screwed either way.
No,
you really think I'm going to get Social Security someday?
I guarantee you, at the very least, you're going to get 78% of your benefits.
That's awesome. I'll get $9,000 a year. That's great.
That's what he thinks it is. It's $5,108 a month. If this guy's such a fucking baller, this year the max benefit is $5,108 a month. If you're such a baller and if you're always maxing out your Social Security, like, what are you talking about? If you make $170,000 a year and you always pay your max benefit and you wait till age 70 to retire, you get $5,108 a year. And it's going to go up every year. It goes up. And that's leaving aside any other money you save, any other pension you have. $9,000 a year. That's insane. I think the minimum, what's the minimum benefit? Like if you retire, if you take full retirement benefits at age 67, it's $1,000 per month. Like it's something like that.
Calling for our government to increase the cap, in fact, get rid of the cap, then your grandkids will get Social Security.
I would much rather, and again, maybe we'll just disagree, but I would much rather result to, hey, 20-year-olds, please save for your own retirement, invest for your own retirement, because the government is bad at dealing with money.
And what happens
don't rely
if they
on them. What happens if what?
What happens if those 20-year-olds don't listen to you?
The same thing that happens if a 20-year-old just doesn't go and get a job because I tell them to. They're going to have a problem, but that's not my fault.
No, I got news for you. It's not your fault, but there used to be in New York City 30,000 people sleeping on the Bowery.
No one in this room was alive before Social Security. We've all lived under this, just like the
and it
income
has
tax.
been the most successful government program in the history of our government.
Things that are successful don't just start to die out and end up in the
dying out.
It's the grab bag of money, the massive excess that was there in the early years because of the 42-to-1 beneficiary.
There wasn't a massive excess in 1936.
42-to-1 is a massive excess.
There weren't that many people who had entered into the Social Security program.
And the fact that
in 1970 it was 3.5 workers to 1. Now it's 2.5, but productivity has increased it. I've told you why the Social Security Trust Fund is running out. It is because of wealth disparity. Billionaires hiding and hoarding their money above the cutoff line, which is $176,000. That's the cap. If you remove the cap,
their money.
Your grandkids
billionaires aren't keeping $2 billion under their mattress. They're investing it back into.
They're just putting it into some stock market, or they're just looking around.
And what do you think a 401k or an IRA relies upon? It relies on the stock market and things like that.
A 401k relies on the stock market, and I knew people who were retaring in 2008 when the stock market tanked and they got screwed.
Well, that's a whole other problem. I would argue that's largely driven by the government being once again terrible with policy and creating bad economic hazards.
Social Security is there regardless of what happens with the stock market.
Okay, pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
I wouldn't shake any of their hands.
Micah.
Hey, Micah.
Good evening,
Sam. Nice to meet you.
There's an idea that you have that basically government can kind of fix all these problems, right? If you didn't save for retirement, well, then the government can just come in, swoop in, and save you from that.
Well, not swoop in. It starts on literally the day you get your Social Security.
Sure. It swoops in once you retire, right? Once you can.
Well, you pay into it.
Right, exactly.
You're paying it for the 40 years you're working, and then you retire when you're elderly, and they give you a relatively modest benefit that keeps you alive and keeps you in your home and keeps you fed, so you don't end up out on the street.
And so you believe this idea basically that government is an effective organization, which it just time and time again, if you look at history, that's proven.
Personally, I could just say this. I have two feelings on this. The first is like, this is obviously wrong, but on the other hand, if more Americans believe this, the weaker the United States is going to be against China. So it's like, if I want communism to win, do I really want to convince conservatives that we need to build up the American state? And the answer is like, I don't know. I don't know if that's right. Like, it's going to hurt Americans, right? And I'm an American, so that sucks. And most of the people I love are American. But on the other hand, that, you know, the more we build up the American state, the more people like this guy are going to dominate the world. And it's like, well, maybe he's right. The government can't do anything right. We should privatize the Pentagon. Get rid of the Pentagon. Let's take the Pentagon budget to $0.
proven to not be true.
When you're hitting at retirement, you don't know. This is an insurance program. That's it. It's an insurance program, and it basically says you're insured against eating cat food when you're 65, and it works. It works.
No, it doesn't. You should have, well, one, you should have your own personal.
How doesn't it work?
How doesn't it work?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've already discussed the details of how it is just completely failing as a program. Like,
well, how is it failing?
Because I'm not going to receive any Social Security
No, I've already
benefit.
told you right now.
I know.
Yes, you were. Well, by the way, this propaganda where it's like, I'm not going to get it, I'm not going to get it, that was spread by people who wanted to steal your money, bitch. You are going to get it. Unless people like you succeeded destroying the program and revoking it. So let's assume that you did get it. Assume that I got my way. And we raised taxes on the rich. And you got Social Security. Would you want to get rid of it then? Instead of assuming that you succeed and you ruin one of the most important programs that we've ever had, let's assume that we succeed. Don't fall for acceleration of propaganda. Socialism will magically win if U.S. fails. People need to be primed for revolution. I'm not saying that we're going to revolutionize America. I'm saying the American superstructure will collapse. Therefore, who's going to take the mantle of capitalist oppression worldwide? There isn't anybody. Therefore, what becomes the most powerful state in the world? Communist China. 1,000 flowers are going to bloom. It isn't about Americans getting socialism. I'm saying that we're going to lift the American boot off the necks of Latin America, of Africa, of the Middle East, of Southeast Asia, and we'll see what happens.
I'm not going to rehash out that debate.
Well,
the main
look at
issue.
the numbers. You've just been told.
By the way, chat, let's bring in some real numbers. According to U.S. Census Bureau data, in 2017, 49% of Americans aged 55 to 66 had no personal retirement savings. So in other words, half of all people nearing retirement age hadn't any money. So if it wasn't for Social Security, they would have nothing for retirement. Nothing at all. The savings shortfall is no surprise to Teresa Giliarducci. We did it. Giliarducci, an economist at the New School in New York. Teresa Giliarducci. He has long predicted that the shift to 401ks would leave vast numbers of Americans without enough money to retire on, reducing many of them to poverty, or forcing them to continue working into their late 60s and beyond. That so many people still do not have 401ks or find themselves like Jen Forbes in such tenuous circumstances when they do is proof that she refers to this 40-year experiment with do-it-yourself pensions has been an utter failure. So if you get rid of Social Security, half of seniors will have nothing and they will die.
Told this, and you know why you've been told it? Is because they want to raid it to give tax cuts to rich people. That's why.
So are you saying there are the Trump tax cuts were only for rich people? You're saying
no, I'm not saying they're only for rich people.
Oh, okay. Then how could
rich people benefited more from it than low-income people? And I would say,
what do you mean benefited more from that? Because we already went over the percentage numbers, and we know that's not true.
They don't need the money as much, and they don't need it.
What are you talking about? These rich people are the people that are investing in smaller businesses. These are the people that are giving other people jobs to allow them to provide for their families.
Okay, pause.
Hey, go for it.
What's up? Hey. Good to be back.
Nice to see you.
Okay, yeah, nice to see you too. I want to zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
So obviously you're pinpointing on Social Security, and there's a reason for that.
And healthcare too.
Oh, okay, but Social Security is the program that you're very concerned about, and that
Medicare. I'd love a Medicare for all program, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the reason you're focusing in on Social Security precisely is because Social Security is the most successful in a shadow of social welfare programs and government spending. That it's like the Democrats.
It's also the biggest bucket of money.
It is the biggest bucket, but the
thing.
Democrats have these social programs and this deficit spending, and it just never ends. It's never enough money. So you're focusing on Social Security because it is the one successful child, but you're ignoring all the social welfare state that we've become.
Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid make up
the majority.
Over like a
right. So 70%
of our
70% of our federal spending is mandatory. And that, you're right. It's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on debt. 8% of who we're paying for that. So the Democrats run on this. Essentially, they want a welfare state. So yes, Social Security might help a lot of people, but it's like we're closer to a welfare state than we've ever been. 38% of the GDP in the U.S. is government spending. That's the highest since World War II. So us conservatives, we're trying to tell you, like, you guys are fiscally really
irresponsible. So are you worried about the tax cuts and what that does to the debt and deficit?
The tax cuts increased revenue.
No.
Yes.
I want to tell you about Kansas.
Okay, tell me about Kansas.
Sam Brown back in 2012 brought in Arthur Laffer. You know the Laffer curve, right?
That's
the argument that if you cut taxes, you're going to get more revenue.
That's exactly what happened.
Kansas.
No, that's exactly what happened to TCJ.
It destroyed Kansas.
Kansas enacted tax and spending cuts in 2012 and 2013. Brownback argued that this fiscal potion would generate an explosion of economic growth, but overall growth and job creation in Kansas underperformed both the national economy and neighboring states. Oops. And revenue did not go up.
Just by 2016, the Republican legislature raised taxes again. They destroyed their education system.
Reality is against you, my friend.
Look up Kansas.
The numbers
during
say
the Trump administration, they sent Sam Brown back. They made him the ambassador to faith because they didn't want this guy around because it was a disaster.
If you want to tax the rich, you should vote Republican because they pay more in taxes
Like, does this guy actually, like, do you see what I mean about dumb versus evil? Like, I don't think this guy actually believes this, but he pretends to believe it.
Republican, it was the same as Reagan. It was the same as Trump.
Look at
the U.S. Look at the U.S. We have the numbers for this.
It was the perfect
Obama's best year, federal income revenue, is pales in comparison to Trump's worst year. Do you get what I'm saying? Does more
the Kansas tax cut experiment. As President Trump and House GOP proposed tax and spending plans that include sharp cuts to income taxes, it's important to explore what happened when Kansas Governor Sam Brownback implemented similar cuts in 2012. The Brownback plan aimed to boost the Kansas economy, but instead led to sluggish growth, lower than expected revenues, and brutal cuts to government programs. The Brownback tax cuts, one of the cleanest experiments for measuring the effect of tax cuts on economic growth in the U.S., were eventually reversed by a Republican-controlled legislature as a failure. Under his plan, the tax rate on pass-through business income fell to 0%. The idea was to boost investment, raise employment, and jumpstart the economy. The program in Kansas served as a lab test for how supply-side tax cuts may work at the federal level. In Kansas, however, these tax cuts proved unsuccessful. The Kansas economy did not grow faster than neighboring states, the country itself, or even Kansas's own growth in previous years. Second, a lowered business income tax can be manipulated. While Kansas cut the tax rate on pass-through income to zero in hopes of promoting economic activity, the growth simply didn't happen. In reality, many people in Kansas recharacterize income from labor into business form in order to take advantage of the 0% tax rate. Like, that's literally, they tried it and it failed utterly.
Taxes necessarily equate to more revenue?
Yes.
No, that's where you're wrong. So if you look at TCJA, and I'll say the numbers again, the top 1% paid more into the system. GDP grew, wages grew 3% year over year under TCJA. So when you're saying tax the rich, it sounds like you're actually a Republican. You just don't know it yet.
You're confusing causation with correlation because Obama's economic recovery was way too slow, and I agree with you on that.
Way too slow.
Way too slow.
when you have tons of stimulus, what you're doing is you're creating the Great Depression for the bottom 90%. All the assets inflate. So who does that benefit? Your policies benefit the 1%. Inflation disproportionately benefits the 1%. It's an immoral tax on the poor.
How did the TCJA affect the federal budget outlook? At the start of 2017, congressional Republicans often spoke about revenue-neutral tax reform. The revenue losses from tax cuts would be offset by rolling back tax breaks or introducing other taxes, most notably a destination-based cash flow tax, something called the border-adjusted tax. The destination-based cash flow tax attracted intense opposition from business groups, especially retailers, and was eventually dropped. Lawmakers then pivoted to a combination of tax cut and reform. The TCJA was the result. The Joint Committee on Taxation and the Congressional Budget Office have published several estimates of the TJA's expected budget impacts. These estimates all show the TCJA substantially reducing revenues and increasing deficits over its first decade. The Joint Committee on Taxation projected that the law would reduce revenues by $1.65 trillion from 2018 to 2027. So in other words, they cut taxes and it reduced revenues and increased the deficit. Way to go.
And that's exactly what happens when they stimulate.
Inflation was not a function of monetary stimulus.
It absolutely was. They increased the money supply by $6 trillion.
I understand they did that. I understand they did that, and they could pull it back on taxes with the wealthy if they wanted to. You're making an argument for higher taxation.
Do you think taxing people makes the country wealthier? Is that what you think?
Does it make the country
wealthier? Do taxes make us wealthy? Is that government increasing taxes? Are we now more wealthy? Do you think that the only way you create wealth is by producing? You said
the money supply expanding was bad. Now you're saying the money supply contracting is bad. Which is it? I don't think you understand things. I don't think you are understanding what you're trying to say. If the money supply expanding caused these problems, taxation is the way to contract it, thereby alleviating those problems. So you want to expand the money supply, but then also not, like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, again, he's just saying shit.
If you tax and spend, government stimulus can, yes, increase GDP, of course.
Is GDP wealth?
Is GDP wealth?
If we import 10 million immigrants and our GDP goes up, are we now wealthier? If the housing
That's how you measure wealth. If you have 10 million more workers and they're doing 10 million more jobs, then you have a lot more wealth. That's what wealth is. Yes. It's sort of like if you had 10 million babies and they grew up to be workers. That would mean you have more wealth in society. Now, is it equally distributed? No. But that's how it works. What are you talking about?
More if CPI goes up because there's more people.
I understand. Inflation is under control.
We're going to Jubilee for a lot of money.
And we haven't pulled that money off the table.
Right, but I'm just saying that
inflation is back down because we had a problem.
The welfare state makes us all poorer. Yes, it does. And you can see it across history.
If you compare,
people want to come here for economic opportunity. We don't want handouts. We want opportunity. That's why, as an immigrant, that's why my family came here. We left the socialist paradise. It's garbage. The people that come here want economic opportunity, and you're stifling that. You're undermining capitalism and the free markets with your utopian vision.
There is no free market.
Well, there's not anymore.
No, there's never
but now there used to be.
No.
That is what makes America the greatest. That's what makes the greatest. America is the greatest economy in the world because of the free market. Free market capitalism is the most ethical and moral.
America had was when we had 90% tax.
That's not true. The numbers are against you.
The greatest economy in the world is China, dude. America's very good at, like, massages and lawyer fees and business-to-business software. But if you're talking about, like, you know, moving steel around and building buildings and bridges and railroads, it's China. If you're talking about pushing paper, America's the best economy in the world. Also, There's nothing funnier than the idea that socialism fails, which is why we have to sanction them with our navy. Socialism is so unsuccessful. That's why we need to do everything we can to destroy these countries that are trying to experiment with different forms of economic organization, because the market will win on its own.
1940, 1950, 1960, the highest top marginal tax rate was 90%, and we
when
had...
Milton Friedman predicted stagflation in the 70s...
He didn't predict shit. He did not predict stagflation, you dumb. What happened is there was an Arab oil embargo. That's what happened. The United States didn't produce enough oil, and the Arabs embargoed us, which caused an energy crunch, which led to stagflation. We supported Israel, and the Arabs said, we're not selling you our oil then. And we ate shit. That's what happened.
Social welfare.
We had OPEC. We had an oil shock that drove inflation way up, and that was a function of OPEC. But in the 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s, highest top marginal tax rate was 90%. We had wealth inequality shrink.
Post-World War II,
we had something called the Great Compression, and more people enjoyed.
Post-World War II Industrial Revolution. We were producing more than every other country. It's because we were producing more than every other country. That's what creates wealth.
And we
production.
were doing that with a 90% tax rate on the wealthiest individuals.
When Reagan came in and brought it down, the top 1% paid more. Can you believe that? No. Do you know that federal income tax? Wait.
Ronald Reagan created massive deficits. This is what's kind of insane. Ronald Reagan did massive deficits and did massive military Keynesianism. He spent a shit ton on stupid military projects. Like, what are you talking about?
Wait, you know federal income tax, it was when it was established.
You're talking about the Laffer curve, and I'm telling you to go look at
here's my last
Kansas.
claim. When federal income tax in 1913, when it was established, was only targeted at the people making $100,000 and over. Now, we don't even know, most people don't even know that. It's just a base tax. Why? Because the projections that they had of taxing the rich didn't work out like they thought. Because it doesn't work out. There's a ton of loopholes. The rich are smart. Like, the rich people are smart. So focus on producing.
Our top marginal rate still produced an effective tax rate that is double what it is today. 50% effective tax rate.
Does not create more wealth.
Yes.
More taxes
well,
do not
I don't know what you mean by wealth. I mean,
wealth is very simple. It's production of goods and services. That's what wealth is.
That's not what wealth is. Wealth is capital, not production. Like, that's what traditionally you mean by wealth. If you mean general prosperity, consumption of goods and services, the United States of America relies on debt finance consumption.
Taxes,
money. People think money is
more
wealth.
Taxes
money buys wealth.
Creates less wealth inequality, and then you have wealth that is shared by more people rather than being in the hands of a plutocracy or a plutonomy. And then you get stuff like an oligarchy.
We've seen what happens
today.
when you punish your top producers over and over again. They leave. They stop producing. The government.
Where are they going to go? Europe? Where are they going to go? China? Where are they going to? Lula's Brazil? Shine Bomb's Mexico? Where the fuck are they going? What are you talking about? Peter Thiel Island?
Capital flight's a myth.
No, it isn't. You cripple the economy. Guess what happens next?
Wait. When did this happen in the country? When we had a 90% tax rate?
It happens in every socialist country. This is the socialist playbook. They're like, they come in and they're...
Yeah, it happens in every socialist country. Well, except for the one that's beating our ass, right? They have capital controls. I mean, I think Sam's wrong about capital flight when you're talking about a small country can be targeted by capitalists, and capital strikes are real and are a thing. That's why the government just has to be prepared to go after the capitalists. You know, as long as you're willing to go after the capitalists, they very quickly get fucking owned.
Like, guys,
this is not a socialist country, and I'm not calling for socialism to have higher tax rates.
It is more socialist than ever before.
No,
we have more
not.
social welfare spending.
No.
GDP. I'll say it again. 38% of government spending of GDP is government spending. We have.
The U.S. government spending was estimated to be 38% of the gross domestic product. However, welfare only accounts for 7% of government spending, excluding health insurance.
More social welfare programs. And look at what happens. But how come we have all these programs? And
it's so funny he thinks we have all these programs. We used to have cash assistance. We used to have social and public housing. We used to have all sorts of programs that have been since cut. Yeah, this is just the primary. This is the primary. Who gives a shit? I don't care about liberal primary.
The black community is still living in poverty.
What programs are you talking about that are geared towards the black community? We during in 2021.
What do you mean, what programs?
We expended. Hold on. In 2021.
What do you mean? What program?
Hold on.
Which program? Please explain the program. I would love to hear the programs you think are geared to the black community. Please explain.
20 is enough. When is it enough? You have the richest country in the world.
We offered $300.
The way you guys think is just insane to me. Like,
let me just finish this.
All right, go ahead.
In 2021, we extended the child tax credit, which is basically a payment, $300 per social welfare.
Yes.
We cut child poverty in 1 year by 45%. By 45%, but because no Republican would join the Democrats and
Chris. Looks like the fact check is true.
Sinema and Joe Manchin voted against this provision in Build Back. I'm talking 2021. From 2021 to 2022, we cut child poverty in this country by 45%. Look it up.
I feel like when I look at it,
I guarantee you, I will give you my phone number. You call.
This is the problem with all these debates. This is the same thing that happened to me with Destiny, right? Like, when you have facts and you're right, all they do is go like, well, I don't believe it. They don't know anything. And they just show this kind of like arrogant sneer. And they rely on the fact that it's 20 conservatives in the room. Right? So they have what they feel like is a social consensus. But in reality, they're dumb as fuck.
If I was wrong,
all right, we'll call.
I'll do it off camera. And you will see that we cut child poverty in a year by 45%.
I'll look into your claim.
All right, guys.
All right. Anyway, we'll talk after the show.
Shut the fuck up. By the way, anybody, in case you're not getting it, everybody who's in here wants to be a conservative influencer. They're not persuadable, all right? They're just people that are desperate for clout. And they want to be a conservative influencer because that's the world we live in now. So my feeling about conservative influencers is they are the lowest form of life on the planet. And they're the most dishonest people on the planet because nothing can ever change their mind. Now, so they're just up there to posture and try to get a clip. That's it. That's all they're there for.
My next claim is Trump's policies make the rich richer and the working class poorer.
Hello, sir.
Hey,
Hunter Howell. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so do you mind if I ask what policies in specific are you referencing to?
Tax cuts for the rich. I think his idea of tariffs on countries and the way that he's talking about will make people poorer. I think all the work that they're doing in
the anti-union shit they're doing in the National Labor Relations Board, the fact that they are fighting to basically reduce OSHA and any kind of protections against like employer abuse. I think the stuff they're doing to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Agency so that banks can screw you. All those are going to make working class people poorer.
In terms of attacking the government agencies will make people poorer because, when you get agencies that are supposed to protect us from corporate interests, they will externalize their costs, those corporations, instead of actually assuming themselves. So their profits are made on the backs of all of us, whether it's our health, our protection from consumer rights, worker rights. His anti-union policies will make us poorer.
So real quick, I'm going to touch on one of the things that you said. Now, there was a lot to unpack there, but
there's a lot of policies.
We'll start at the very beginning. You talked about taxes. Let's talk about, in his first term, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. There are a couple things in that specific policy that actually do benefit the middle class and the lower class more than the top 1%. So you mentioned taxes, right? But in that, from the IRS data that came out, the middle class and lower class got affected. I think they ended up saving like 3 to 4% on their taxes, on their tax cuts, whereas the billionaires only saved 2%. So if we're talking an actual dollar amount, sure, the billionaires saved more, but they also make a lot more, right? Also, the billionaires don't really care about an extra grand or two. In that specific policy, the child tax credit doubled from $1,000 per household to $2,000. No billionaire cares about an extra grand in their pocket, but I can guarantee you the working class does. So how would you rebuttal that?
I would say, in terms of the taxes themselves, well, the policies that Trump wants to pursue this time are to expand those taxes for wealthy folks. And over time, what starts to happen is you have this wealth disparity, and as the wealth disparity increases, it becomes harder for working people, essentially, to keep up. Things become more expensive. You get inflationary pressures when you have people with more money. We have more and more billionaires than we did 4 years ago. And a large part of that was obviously COVID, but a large part of it is also money starts to accelerate. Once you, like you say, when a millionaire gets a tax cut for a couple of grand or 60 grand or $500,000 at the end of the day, they end up investing that and ends up growing because they're not out there working for their money. Their money is just is doing all the work.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think we can agree with you on that when it comes to, billionaires and millionaires and there being a wealth gap in our country, right? I don't think Republicans or liberals would disagree on that, but I think where we will fundamentally disagree is under Trump, right, the stats show that take-home pay was higher for the middle class and the lower class. Inflation was down. They weren't paying as much on taxes.
Inflation was down, but wage growth was actually greater during the Biden administration.
Well, that's because due to COVID, when a lot of people lost jobs.
No. I mean, I'm talking in percentage comparison between those 4 years and these past 4 years, wage growth grew, not from as a baseline on 2020, but I'm talking as a baseline from 2016.
Interesting. Okay, well then another point that I want to talk on with you real quick is you talked about slashing government agencies, for instance, the Department of Government Efficiency. I'm sure you've heard about that a lot in the news.
That's not a government agency. That's just some committee.
It actually an executive order was signed to make DOGE an official government agency as of less than a week ago. So yeah, It is an official.
That's not what an agency is. Now this is like pretty basic civics, but I feel like a lot of people don't know what agencies are. So agencies are basically institutions that are set up in the executive branch to carry out a delegated authority from the legislature. So a good example of that is the Environmental Protection Agency. Congress recognized that they lack the scientific expertise to be able to evaluate chemicals and industrial effluviants and pollution and air quality. And so they created an agency called the Environmental Protection Agency, and they would have a leader appointed by the president called the EPA administrator, and they would hire subject matter experts to develop rules that would have the force of law to protect the environment, according to the mandate that they were granted by the legislative branch. So it's a kind of a melding of executive and legislative authority in a delegated bureaucratic agency, because Congress recognizes that they don't have the expertise to know what level of lead should be in your water or what level of pollution is tolerable in the air or how you should distribute, So they create this. That's what an agency is. The president just saying, I want these bunch of guys to exist and signing an executive order is not an agency.
Government agency. So obviously we're talking about money.
DOGE is not a full government agency. President Trump recognized an existing group within the executive office of the president to form DOGE, which has team members working with agency heads.
We want people to be able to afford a house. We want them to be able to afford to raise a family, right? As a young man myself, I want to be able to grow up in America and be able to afford food one day, right? I mean, I can't now, but continue that. And at the way things are going, it's unsustainable for people on the left, people on the right, people in the middle. So we have to come to a common ground on how to fix that. What's unsustainable? The fact that cost of living is increasing year after year.
What does DOGE do to inhibit cost of living?
Yeah, absolutely. So what DOGE is going to do, the Department of Government Efficiency, is slash a lot of the federal spending, right? So what happens when the feds...
What spending is going to get cut?
So I'm getting there. One second, sir. So what's going to happen is the Department of Government Efficiency is going to slash a lot of...
Say the Department of Government Efficiency again. You can just say right? You don't have to say that whole fucking dumb acronym out loud again. You could just say if you need some time to think. I would honestly prefer you say than Department of Government Efficiency again.
Federal spending. What happens is the government, Republicans, Democrats alike, spend a bunch of money that, excuse my language, but it's nonsense, right? They spend it out here, they spend it out there.
Be more specific.
Can you, this is what's so tiring in politics. It's so tiring to listen to people's bullshit rhetoric. If you sound like this when you talk about politics, you are a dumb fuck. You are a dumb piece of shit. If you fill up time just saying nothing, and this is absolutely nothing, you should shut the fuck up.
Specific here or there, are you talking about cutting defense? Because they're not going to cut defense.
Well, for example,
wait a second.
Well, no. Let me finish. Okay. $175 billion to Ukraine, first and foremost. That was a bunch of nonsense. So we're going to talk about that, but we also have a bunch of other things in the Defense Department, as well as a bunch of DEI departments.
Well, they're not touching, first of all, there are no DEI departments.
That's completely false.
Listen. Defense spending is not going to be touched by DOGE.
Ron.
And when you talk about the government, what's the biggest expenditure government has?
Our military and Social Security are our top two.
And Medicare and Medicaid, right? Now, they're not going to touch the military. Are they going to cut Social Security?
You're asking me like I'm part of DOGE.
No. Well, you're telling me that DOGE is going to help everybody here. And I'm telling you, if they cut Social Security, everybody in here is going to get hit. Because these folks are going to have to pay for their parents, because Social Security keeps 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. So tell me what they're going to cut that's going to make it easier for Americans.
I already did.
What?
I told you the $175 billion that we've sent to Ukraine. We're no longer going to
So he's going to...
So Donald Trump has signed an executive order.
What's going to save Americans is us not sending old rockets to Ukraine. Now, I personally don't think that just because you have weapons, we need to shoot them off is a good excuse. But that is not going to improve Americans' consumption.
You've been voted out by the majority.
Thank you, sir.
So there was no actual thing. There was no actual point made. Awesome.
Okay, so why did we see a higher increase in the top 1% paying as part of federal income revenue under TCJA?
Why did we see a higher increase in the...
So under TCJA, it was passed 2017,
right.
It was effective 2018. 2018 and onward, we actually saw the top 1% pay more. They had more of the federal income tax burden. They paid 45% as opposed to Obama. During Obama's tax plan, they only paid about 40 to 42% of the federal income tax.
Because they got more money.
Right, okay, so they got more money.
They got richer.
But why are they paying, and why did they get richer? So this goes on inflation that...
I mean, that's my point, is the rich are getting richer.
Right, but why would you say that they're getting richer? But you mentioned inflation? Or?
No, they're not, well, I mean, I think that the inflation, to the extent that there was money that wasn't a function of logistics and other problems that we had during COVID, yeah, the rich got richer. Not all inflation is a function of monetary inflation.
That's true, but when we look at COVID and we can see that they increased the money supply by 40%, they added $6 trillion, and you have a Federal Reserve System that's doing quantitative easing. And
Trump did that. Trump did that. Trump did almost all of that. Like, what are you talking about? That was a bipartisan reaction to the pandemic. And it was necessary to avoid, mass catastrophic collapse of consumption and societal breakdown.
And pumping stimulus into the economy, you can attribute that to left-wing policy. The entire Federal Reserve System is Keynesian economics. Those are very...
No, it's not. The Federal Reserve is not Keynesianism, it's monetarism, which is exactly what Milton Friedman taught, you dumb rat fuck. You don't even know who taught what. You don't even know what taught what. Milton Friedman was a monetarist. Why are you nodding yes?
Left wing.
Well, I can tell you this, inflation went up in...
The Federal Reserve ebbs and flows between monetarism and Keynesian economics. No, it doesn't. Keynesian economics is around fiscal outlays. The Fed doesn't do fiscal outlays. It doesn't do fiscal outlays. It just affects the monetary supply by changing interest rates. And the only interest rate it can change is the federal funds rate. What are you talking about? Unless you're talking about quantitative easing programs that have to be granted statutorily by the government. Again, but that's not Keynesianism. Somebody save me. Somebody save me. Monetarists believe in controlling the supply of money that flows into the economy by allowing the rest of the market to fix itself. Keynesian economists believe that a troubled economy continues a downward spiral unless an intervention drives consumers to buy more goods and services. Source: Investopedia. Can you imagine? I mean, like, if you don't understand anything about like government policy, do you think reading this means anything to anyone?
In Western European countries, the same rates
that had stimulus.
No, they didn't have the same level of stimulus that we did. No, they did.
They absolutely did.
They did.
You can look at Japan. Yeah, I hear this topic all the time from the Democrats. They say, "Oh, inflation was global." Not true. China never went above 3% inflation during all of COVID, and they were actually under deflationary.
You know what? Let's have a compromise. Let's do the Chinese form of government. I agree. You know what? Who says we can't compromise? I'm a compromising kind of guy. I'm in favor of a one-party communist state with 60% of the economy being state-owned enterprises. I'm in favor. This is a good policy. I'm in favor of this is a good idea. This is a great idea. I'm in favor of this one. We can reach across the aisle on this one.
Pressures. Japan, which is part of the G7, was also never had deflationary pressures. They never had inflation increase. The only countries that had inflation increase.
In Western Europe, you could see inflation. Well, you could England, Germany, Italy, France. They didn't stimulate as much as we did. It wasn't monetary inflation. If you
The inflation rate doubled from early 2020 to early 22 in 37 of 44 countries. In 16 countries, the inflation rate quadrupled. Yeah, no shit. And also, cherry picking two countries, China, which I don't know if you know this, chat. I don't even know if you know this, but they produce all the stuff. So when there is a supply chain crunch that didn't allow ships to sail from China, it resulted in the products remaining in China, meaning that there was more competition. Therefore, they had deflationary pressure because they couldn't export their products. So China, because they produce everything, saw deflation or no inflation.
look at the cost of goods.
And China has way too much export compared to internal consumption. I think that China is working on trying to increase their consumption. Actually, their domestic consumption. I don't think it's that China has too little consumption. It's that America has too much in the hands of dumb fucks. Why watch Trump talk in 2 minutes? It doesn't look like we're going to make it in 2 minutes, but if you want to link it to me, you can.
Logistics got screwed up because of COVID.
So let's look at the reason. all international trade, because we're the world reserve currency, is done in U.S. dollars. Because we experience domestic inflation was high.
So you're saying our inflation
yes,
caused
it affects
higher inflation
absolutely,
in Europe?
because
that's
trade,
not what economists say.
Well, you can look at the facts. International trade is we have dollar-denominated international trade. All international trade that's why we're the world reserve currency. You guys claim that the U.S. recovered faster than anybody else. It's like, well,
it did.
It's because we have a privilege of being the world reserve currency, and we export our inflation. Like the strength. We
export our inflation.
Yeah, and let me explain that. Let me explain that the U.S. dollar is the most safe asset in the world. In times of great crisis and great volatility, like COVID crisis, everybody turns to the dollar.
Sure.
Many currencies are tied to the dollar. So it's like when you
the euro is not tied to the dollar.
The euro is not, but international
okay.
trade. So if the euro actually crashed against the dollar during COVID. The euro used to be above the dollar.
That's exactly the point. Is the U.S. stimulated and they had a better economy and that hurt the euro.
Clear what your point.
My point is that the inflation is caused by left-wing policies, and
so inflation was caused by, you're saying,
supply shock and pumping trillions of dollars into the economy.
Well, first of all, you understand that the Federal Reserve is not part of Biden. Didn't have control over the Federal Reserve.
Absolutely not, but the entire Federal Reserve System is left-wing in economic theory. That's the Keynesian economics. It's interventionist economics.
It's not.
So
it's not. Unless you're saying Milton Friedman is left wing. Maybe this guy thinks that. I really think this guy's stupid. Monetarism is mainly associated with the work of Milton Friedman, who was an influential opponent of Keynesian economics, criticizing Keynes' theory of fighting economic downturns using fiscal policy, e.g. government spending. Friedman and Anna Schwartz wrote an influential book, A Monetary History of the United States, and argued that inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon.
You're saying that the
more you
quantitative easing,
the more you stimulate. Yeah.
Why didn't we get it through QE?
We do get it through
Why
QE.
didn't we get inflation during the Obama years?
We did get inflation.
We didn't get
the wealth gap that you guys attribute. We absolutely did.
What numbers of inflation did we get during the Obama years that were outside of like the 2% sort of Fed target?
I don't think it was as high as COVID. COVID hit as high as 9%.
No, it wasn't even remotely
right,
close.
But when we look at the effects of compounding inflation.
For most of the Obama administration, consumer price inflation hovered at or around 2%. In summer 2011, annual consumer price inflation briefly rose to 3.8%, but by spring 2012, it was back below 2%. There was almost no inflation during the entire Obama administration. What is he talking about?
QE 1, 2, and 3 all happened during the Obama years. If your theory was correct, we would have had rampant inflation. In fact, Glenn Beck was talking about how we were going to turn into Weimar Germany, and none of that happened.
Here's the factors you're missing.
None of it.
Here's the factors you're missing.
So if you look at what's happening at Western Europe, well, no, listen.
We didn't close down the economy. The Biden administration closed down the economy.
I understand.
No, that was not the entire world.
Excuse me, the Biden administration?
Yes, they forced mask mandates. They supported Democrats.
Wait.
They supported Democrat
states. Do you
states.
not remember who was president in the first year of COVID?
What? Yeah, it was Trump. I'm not.
Right.
So I'm not saying Trump had a role in this, but I'm saying.
Well, wait a second. By the time in 2021, the economy was opening back up.
Yes, the economy.
All of what you're talking about.
No thanks to the Democrats.
Well, okay,
the Democrats wanted to keep it closed.
Okay, you can talk about hypothetically what the Democrats want, but
it's not hypothetically. We can look at mask. We can look at their mandates. We can look at them closing down.
The economy closed down in 2020, March of 2020.
Well, okay, sure.
Donald Trump was president.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
This guy has been convinced that if he just says facts and moves his head around, that will somehow mean that he made an argument. This is the problem with these kind of debates, is they're just dumb as fuck. Also, Zoomers are not sending their best.
How's it going, sir?
Good. How you doing? Sam.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
When you're talking about like
Who's this Amish motherfucker? Mennonite looking motherfucker. His name is Brian. Oh God, dude. This guy has never fucked. This guy has never had sex. I would put money on it.
Inflation. In 2021,
he's nervous.
Janet Yellen said it would be transitory, and then again in 2022, she said it would be transitory, and it turned out to not be transitory. And then one major thing happened in 2022. I think we all know what that was. That was the war in Ukraine. And I believe, and I can explain, that the war in Ukraine was explicitly caused by Joe Biden's bad foreign policy, and that shut.
I mean, I think the war in Ukraine is an under-discussed element of inflation. It's probably one of the most important elements of inflation that people don't talk about. And yes, it was. That's true. But this has nothing to do with making the rich richer and the working class poorer. What are you talking about? This is supposed to be Trump's policies. What are you talking about? This is supposed to be Trump's policies. Dr. Phil's Elon and Donald Trump therapy session? What the fuck are you linking me?
Shot inflation up from, like, there was already pretty bad inflation in early 2022 and in late 2021, but it shot it up from the low kind of margins in like 3 or 4% all the way to 9% in 2022 of July at the peak.
That was an underestimate, actually, but we'll let them say 9.
Inflation is now down around 2%, around where, you know.
Yeah, in between 2.5
yeah,
and 6,
where they're looking to get it. And we have really close to record unemployment that we've had over the past 4 years. But how does this have to do with...
okay, this is my own pet peeve. I don't think you can look at unemployment rates and compare them to pre... I think the way that they have done the unemployment rate in reaction to gig work is completely bullshit. I don't think the gig work, like, people are never truly are unemployed because you just download Uber and you drive somebody once and now you're not unemployed. And it's like, no, you're fucking unemployed. You know, like, we've converted, you know, odd jobs into like a low unemployment rate. And it's like, no. That is not a like-to-like comparison. But it was 3% in 2000. It was a little bit different than it is now. It was better then because people were taking W-2 jobs, not 1099 gig work jobs that make you fucking nothing. This is my own bugaboo.
Trump's policies not making the richer richer and the rest of us poor.
Okay, so what I was just explaining with... I was going to get into oil prices. So oil prices skyrocketed in 2022 because in 2021, when Biden got into office, he shut down our Keystone pipeline, shut down all new oil and gas leases in America. Then he took the sanctions off.
We are producing right now more oil in this country than we ever have in the history of any country everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
On top of the fact that Biden is credited by oil traders, and this isn't something that I, am terribly excited about.
What did he just do on the East Coast?
Apparently, what Biden did during the past 4 years is he used the strategic oil reserve to drive down oil prices and essentially broke and it's filled back up. And he filled it back up, and he broke the negotiating power and the price setting power by oil countries across the world. Really, I mean, oil traders hail him for doing this, and frankly, I don't think it's that impressive. But let's talk about what Trump's policies are.
We only have a little bit of time left, but I was getting to that. So oil prices in 2021, Biden took all the sanctions off of the pipeline in Russia, and the pipeline in Russia ran straight through Ukraine originally, and he knew that if he invaded Ukraine would destroy the pipeline, and his economic success would be destroyed in Russia. I don't
think they did that until very recently. I think the Europeans pressured the Ukrainians to keep moving gas, didn't they? Like, they kept importing gas through Ukraine until like very recently.
The sanctions?
Are you talking about the one that went? Are you talking about the one that went through the Baltic Sea? Are you talking about Nord Stream?
Biden or
Putin. Putin knew that that would occur in Russia if the sanctions were taken off of that pipeline. And Biden took all the sanctions off of Nord Stream 2 in Russia like the second week he was in office. And then a year later, Putin invades Ukraine. Sanctions happen all over the world, and inflation rises within 6 months all the way up to 9%. Trump is going to do great things with oil and let us drill, and what that actually does for the economy.
Like I say, we are producing more oil in this country than any country in the history of the world.
What executive order did Biden just sign to have to do with offshore drilling in the East Coast?
Oh my God. Tesla's down 15% today. Rip Mike. Rip Mike. I should have sold.
He stopped it.
Yeah. Really dumb idea. We're about to begin a new.
Well, so you want to go beyond even the record-breaking thing?
Yes, I want to become energy independent.
Climate?
And that lowers inflation.
We're going to sell this oil.
Better.
We don't use the oil. We sell it.
We sell
it.
Getting money in the pockets of American citizens.
No, they don't. It goes to internationally held corporations. What is this guy talking about? When ExxonMobil extracts oil, that doesn't go in the pockets of Americans. There's very few Americans even involved. A well gets drilled, it's connected to a pipeline, it goes to a refinery. There's very little in the way of Americans where any of this money sticks to our hands at all. We don't have government-owned oil enterprises. We're not Norway. We're not Brazil. That money goes to international investors. Do you own ExxonMobil stock? If you don't own ExxonMobil stock, there's nothing going to you. Not at all.
Sell it. Well, how is that oil getting to the pocket of American citizens?
Because when you lower the prices of oil, that lowers the prices of all products.
I understand that the inflationary prices effect of energy. But the fact of the matter is, they're just going to sell it.
Yeah, we're going to
sell it.
Yeah, so we're going to.
You want to produce even more oil than we are now.
Yes.
And you don't think climate change is going to impact.
No.
You don't believe in climate change.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion. But no.
Well, I mean,
it isn't though. It's all related, because if you destroy the climate, then we have other expenses. So if we make $5 billion selling oil, but we do $1 trillion of damage, do you see how we're down $995 billion? So maybe we shouldn't have burned that $5 billion worth of oil.
Sort of the same discussion.
Yeah, no, I believe that climate change is, well, there's obviously an element of climate change that is partially true, but lowering or
Which part of it?
Raising man-made raising temperatures by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius in the next 150 years isn't necessarily a detriment to society. Human beings.
You don't think so?
No, human beings are very good at innovation, and we can build seawalls, and we can create carbon technology.
What kind of seawall are you going to build for Miami? What are you going to do about when we get?
I'm talking about the economy right now, which if we get back on topic.
All right, guys. Sorry, time's up. I'll let you go
no problem.
longer.
I choose Ben because he let me lecture him about Social Security.
My claim is that abortion is immoral and should not be legal.
Yeah, I disagree largely because I think the primary rights that we have under a society should belong to the person, and I don't believe a fetus is a person.
Okay, okay, so that's very interesting. You don't believe the fetus is a person. When do you think that it gains personhood, in your opinion? Would you agree it's a human life, at least?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, yes, I think largely, I think that claim is largely like it's not relevant to the way that I think about it. I think about it in terms of personhood. I mean, I think life exists all around us. And
not human. Well, I mean, human life, but not like there's not.
Human life does exist all around us. Like, for example, an in vitro fertilization clinic has a lot of frozen embryos, right, with their own genetic identity. And I think it's a good thing that families all over the world are able to take advantage of that technology and have their own biological children at the expense of fertilized embryos that are not implanted. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. Why? Because fertilized embryos don't have experiences. They don't have personhood. They don't have emotions. They don't have a connection to any other human being other than like a property ownership of the parent, right? Like, they're not a human being. Any of the essential factors of what makes it a person is not evident in the fertilized embryo. It doesn't mean that it has no value or it's valueless. It doesn't mean it has no potential. But I think the reality of the rampant destruction of fertilized embryos is worth it to create the children that arise from in vitro fertilization, right? And I'm able to make that distinction because a human person actually is endowed with consciousness, and fertilized cell egg is not. All right. And it's, there is a point in the development of an embryo or a fetus where it's starting to become more and more moral weight might be attached. Right. And that is a question of societal consensus. That's a question that might change over time as we learn more things. But the idea that most abortions are not relevant to that question of like a third trimester development. Most abortions happen in the first trimester. And in fact, if we made abortion legal, if we made abortion part of a reproductive health care that every person was entitled to on demand for free, we would have almost no late-term abortions.
Human life in a tree, correct?
Right, correct.
Okay. So it's human life.
It's human life.
But it's not a person?
It's not a person.
At which point does it gain personhood and gain the value of being a human?
Well, I think it becomes a person when it's born.
Why? So 5 seconds prior, it's not born yet, not person. 5 seconds after exits the birth canal, person. Is there a magical quality to the birth canal? What is that?
The person becomes separate from the host that has been that it's been growing inside.
Okay, so would you assign that to other human beings that are attached to things? Like, for instance, if I'm attached to a machine, am I a machine now? Am I part of that machine, or am I still a human life?
Well, see, the thing is, when you're, for example, in a hospital, you're a human being who has consciousness and continuity and relationships. Your personhood has existed for a long time. You don't lose your personhood just because you then become dependent upon a machine to sustain life, right? Like, your personhood had already been developed when you were born. You don't just like lose it. But however, if you become brain dead, you do, right? Like, you might have a human body that was being sustained by a machine, but they were brain dead. So you could turn the machine off and you haven't committed murder because the person has gone. Do you understand? And also, and this is another thing, a person might even still have consciousness, but decide they want to suspend treatment. Like, say that all parts of my body work really well, except for my lungs. And I'm on a breathing machine. And I elect to turn off the breathing machine. You did not kill me. You did not murder me. I will die as a natural consequence of that. But but that's not murder. I have it, that is not a legally prescribed act. Withholding treatment is a decision that I get to make as part of my own bodily autonomy. Just like I could refuse chemotherapy, I could refuse surgery, I could refuse a blood transfusion, I could refuse all that because I have bodily autonomy.
I just need support in order to stay alive.
If you've never been born and you're growing in, let's say, a test tube, for instance, then yes, I would argue you're not a person yet.
Okay, so it's not really the disconnected part. It's the being born part.
Well, being born means being disconnected from your mother.
Okay, so you're specifically
abortion is about the mother's autonomy, right? The mother is evicting the person from her body. Just here, I'll help you. I'll make an analogy that a conservative will understand. So imagine you're a multimillionaire landlord, right? And you have a single mother of 3 young children, and she doesn't pay rent. All right. Now you evict her, right? And she goes out into the streets with those young children. Now that's because she wasn't paying rent, right? And you have the right to control your property, right? Your apartment building. Now, when she goes out on the street and dies due to exposure because it's really cold that night, would you say that you're a murderer? And if your answer is no, then you can't possibly be against abortion. Now, personally, I think that would be murder. I think that would be social murder. And the reason why is because that mother is a human person. She has consciousness. And you're a greedy fucking capitalist sponger. And you have too much. You have property that you shouldn't have. You're extracting value from people without actually producing any value because of you're an asset owner. So I think she should actually be entitled to have a home. Whereas, you know, you occupying part of her body, I would be against it. I think for guys like this, I think the best analogy for him would be, what if somebody has kidney failure and I decide to just connect them to your body? You know, I take an artificial, I take a tube, I connect your bloodstreams. You guys have the same blood type. So this is not a problem. And you're required to keep that person connected to you so they can clean their blood with your functional kidneys, right? And then you send good, healthy, clean blood into their body. Now, if you disconnect them, they're going to die, right? Would you be in favor of me for mandating that on you? I mean, it's a human person. It's a human life.
Having the quality of being birthed as what makes someone a person.
Person within the context of like our society and civilization.
So just in our society, you wouldn't say that objectively that's a person. You would say that we just decide that it's a person because it's birth.
Yeah, rights we give to persons. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that's an interesting kind of definition.
This is kind of the basic 101 level understanding of these concepts that you would get in high school. At least I did. Now, I went to a public high school. All right. Maybe public high schools aren't like this anymore. But when I was in high school, we had these conversations. We literally talked about the concepts of personhood. We talked about we talked about the pro-life position, the pro-choice position. We were able to research it. We had to present them. We had to understand it. Now, this was a public high school, so I don't know how it works on like Catholic conservative school.
Of what human life and specifically personhood
well, no,
is.
I don't. I'm conceding that it's human life, but that you're not a person until you're born, and you do not have the same like rights that we would give. Like look, we have rights about cruelty to animals, for instance, right? But they're not persons within the context of our society.
I'm not saying that they are, but specifically, it seems like you're just kind of saying, oh, it's a person when it's born, but you're not actually providing any consistent reason for that. You're just saying it just is a person.
I'm saying that on some level, there's a certain amount of like arbitrariness as to when we give rights. Like one could say, like, do you say it's at conception?
Sure, yeah.
So IVF, in other words, would have to be illegal under your principle because.
I mean, I'm not sure that I would agree with IVF in that case. It really depends on the particulars in that case, but I believe.
Well, what do you mean the particulars in that?
Well, so for instance, at conception, you would still be a human life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the fertilized egg attaches to the uterine wall.
So it's not a person. It's a human life, but it's not a person. Okay, you figured it out. Yay! You figured it out. You figured it out, guys. You figured it out. That's arbitrary. What's up? Huh? Gotcha. All right.
Is it human life for you or what?
It's human life, yeah.
Okay, so human life should be protected.
Yes.
Okay, so IVF.
Yeah, I would say that.
So IVF should be illegal under your rubric.
No. So they're human lives, correct?
The IVF is when the egg and the sperm in that and then they're supplanted.
Yes.
Is it when is it human life?
As soon as it has unique human DNA, that's a human life.
Okay. So
it's a new human, correct?
Now, in the IVF process, there's stuff that gets thrown out. Like,
yes.
You would consider that murder.
I'm not even defending IVF or going against it. I'm specifically saying abortion. That was my claim, right? I'm not going to argue IVF.
But isn't that abortion under your principle?
I would say if you get rid of human life after conception, I don't think that's moral. I'm not going to argue the IVF particulars because that's not what my claim was, right?
When we're talking about laws, right? Because you want to outlaw abortion.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. When we're talking about laws, it's not just morality when we form public policy around and create laws.
Not just, but it should be moral, correct?
Well, I mean, I think like your definition.
Moral is how do we determine which morality? Democratic consensus. Right? We have a morality and we use democratic consensus to kind of derive that.
Of what
it doesn't mean that it's actually what moral is. Like, for example, the Holocaust was legal. Slavery was legal. Racial discrimination and segregation was legal. Women in second class as chattel of their husbands was legal. Marital rape was legal. So, like, child labor was legal. Like, what do you, like all sorts of evil shit was legal.
Constitutes moral and mine are different. For instance, I would prefer, in a perfect world, not to have abortion on demand until, up until birth, right?
Sure.
In a perfect world. However, we know in practice that when you start to restrict things, like say, only in the threat of life to the woman, let's say, that's the only way we're going to allow abortions, right? When you start to have these exceptions, they're in practice, they don't work, because when your life is in jeopardy and you come into a hospital, the doctor doesn't see a bulb that shows up above you and say, like, your life is in jeopardy. It's always a subjective assessment. And what does life in jeopardy, hold on, what does life in jeopardy mean? Does it mean a 30% chance of death? Does it mean a 50%, a 70%, or a 20%? That's why we now have women who are dying, because doctors are afraid to perform abortions on them. That's true.
Are you referencing, just because some doctors misread plain text doesn't mean that that it's when you all of a sudden that life is less valuable or more valuable?
No. It means that you are subjecting the woman to more risk, and it's impossible. These exceptions are they're canards.
No, Christian.
When you oppose a law, it is not just about morality, it's in practice.
Sure,
in practice,
I understand that.
You cannot do this without sacrificing women's lives because
what about
of your
the unborn
morality.
Children, though? Because let's go back to your born
unborn
thing.
Children
so let's
are
say
not persons,
you have a 9-month,
and the mother has more rights, in my mind, than the unborn child.
Yeah, that's a claim that you can make. But so a 9-month birthed child, or just 9 months and just now born, it's a newborn baby. A 5-month could be emergency C-section and could be birthed, right? Let's say they don't do that. What's the difference between the arbitrary choice of taking that child out of the womb at 6 months?
Here's the thing. Are you going to provide universal health care for all premature babies now? I thought that was rape slavery or whatever the fuck conservatives said. Are you going to provide intensive incubator, the NICU coverage for every American now? Is that what's happening? Because if the answer is you're not, then then no one's paying for it, so it doesn't happen. And then you think that's a justified death. Like, what are you talking about, man?
We take all children
what I'm
months.
saying is that the personhood just because of birth runs into a problem where it starts to say,
all right, guys,
well,
I hate to do it, but I gotta do it. I'm sorry, that's time.
Okay.
Hey, appreciate it.
Listen, if you want people to not have abortions, then just tell them not to have abortions, and I'm perfectly fine with people deciding not to have an abortion. I think that's a good compromise. If you want to be pro-life, you can be pro-life.
I'm glad I was here. It was interesting. It was, I know my questions were more sort of policy oriented, I think, than maybe folks anticipated here, and I was a little bit surprised that there wasn't many people here who could address the policies. They were very, very sure of themselves as to why they voted for Trump, but a lot of it was sort of not material in any way.
So there was stuff that conservatives were saying today that I fundamentally disagreed with my entire heart, but at the end of the day, we're still part of the conservative movement. So I think there are people that I disagreed with, there are people that I completely did agree with, but the cool thing about this new conservative movement and the people here today is it's people from all different walks of life sharing their perspective.
I don't think Sam had any, like, at least when I was speaking to him, I don't think Sam really had great responses because the reality is not on his side.
The guy who thinks that the deficit went down due to the tax cuts is not living in reality.
I don't think socialism works. I think social programs can be good up to a certain extent, but we are very socialist.
By the way, whenever a conservative says social programs work up to a certain extent, they've already surrendered. They've already surrendered. Like that's actually intellectually, they've already surrendered the entire fight, because then it just becomes a conversation about what they personally think is a good program or not. In which case, we're already talking about the validity of programs as an idea. We're already talking about democracy as the source of the information about which programs we fund and which one we don't. So they've already given up all of the argument. Socialism doesn't work, but whenever you bring up a program I like, I'm going to say that's not socialism. You've already given up the whole fight, man.
As a nation, and yeah, I mean, I'll just say it again. Socialism does not work. Sorry. Wish it did.
I think debate is healthy, and I think it helps viewers sort of clarify why certain people support certain things, and it gives an opportunity, I think, to both have fun and drama and maybe learn some stuff. So that's always a good thing.
Wow.